Welcome to the Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting, June 18th, 2013. We'll begin our meeting with the salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pullen, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Galloway?
Here.
Mr. Snipes?
Here.
Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dents? Mr. Rocco?
Here.
Let the record show Mr. Dents was unfortunately tied up at work. He will not be able to be here this evening. We have a pretty lengthy agenda, as you can see, and we want to sort of get right to it. We have a couple of, starting off with a good announcement and then sort of a little bit of a announcement, a refresher, I guess, from our last meeting. At our last meeting, the video equipment that tapes these meetings that are then sort of broadcast on the local cable channel and also put on our website malfunctioned. We had gone through about 15 minutes of the meeting or so, and we were told by our media coordinator that the machine was down. So we paused and allowed him to sort of get it back up and running again. Tried to start, began the meeting again, picked up where we left off, and the machine failed immediately again. And everything was lost. So the previous meeting, was not videotaped at all. Obviously, we couldn't air it, and we won't be able to ever air it. And so one of the announcements, or one of the things we did at that meeting, we thought would be interesting to sort of have again, sort of broadcast to the public, and so we had asked that group to come back. But we want to start with our Environmental Advisory Council, who has done some work over the past few months, and they would like us to consider becoming a bird town. So if we could have, not sure who's going to be presenting, if all the members are here, or if just here we go.
We've got a few members here. I'm Wes Plaisted. I am the chairman of the Falls Environmental Advisory Committee, and we've been working towards getting Falls to be set up as a bird town. And we have a representative from the Audubon Society, Mr. Steve Safier, and he'd like to make a little presentation so people can kind of know what's going on with bird town. So.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I apologize for not getting you materials ahead of time, but I do have strategic plan and some other information.
Sure, that's, we can distribute them up here. Thank you.
I'm with Audubon, Pennsylvania, which is the state office of the National Audubon Society. Not every state has a state office. You may be familiar with Audubon chapters, of which there's 500 of them around the country. Audubon, Pennsylvania has a program called Audubon at Home, which really takes Audubon to a new audience. Instead of just your sort of average bird watcher, it really takes it to people who own homes or rent homes or have property that they have jurisdiction over. And it really informs them on how to create a healthier habitat, healthier landscape, not only for birds, but for people and pets as well. We have a couple programs under the Audubon at Home umbrella. One of them is the Bird Habitat Recognition Program, where people can actually register their property, get tied into a network, learn about plants and animals and interacting with nature. And then from there we expanded to a program called Bird Town, which is a partnership between Audubon, Pennsylvania and municipalities around Pennsylvania to really promote conservation and stewardship, teach ways to create a sustainable landscape, healthier landscapes without pesticides, and ways to attract birds and other wildlife, and educate and really reconnect people with nature. We've lost touch in so many ways with the natural world around us. Kids are plugged in now 10 hours a day or whatever it is to electronics, and really don't have that experience that maybe our generation did, growing up in tree houses and tree forts and the woods, and having access to that. So that's really what Bird Town is all about. The program's been around for about 3 years. We have 19 municipalities as designated Audubon bird towns. The closest one to here would probably be Yardley, or Lower Makefield, actually, Newtown. Pendle did sign up about 2 years ago and haven't really been active. But what it is a relationship. It's a partnership in which we create opportunities for people to learn about nature. We create opportunities for them to get outside or to come to a town hall such as this and learn about things. We have lecture series, we have festivals. It's all good, positive stuff. We don't talk about the sky is falling or major issues. We talk about what's happening in Falls Township and how people can address that in their own backyards. And we're having a great time with the other municipalities. We have a major festival once a year at Green Lane Park in western Montgomery County. We do training workshops each year, and starting in the fall, we're going to be doing regional workshops. So Bucks County will have their own workshop. It's a 2-day workshop where we teach people to sort of read the ecological conditions of their own yards or to help their neighbors. There's a real concentration in Bucks County, not just in this area, but also Doylestown, sort of central Bucks. Number of municipalities signed up in Bucks County, so we're looking forward to creating a more regional model for these workshops. We've been doing them town to town, but with now almost 25 towns, if you include the ones that are sort of in the pipeline, we're going to start doing these regional nodes. So I'm happy to answer any questions. That's basically it. It's been quite successful, like I said, about just getting people engaged in their backyards, in the natural areas and parks of your township. The program also includes signage, so you'll have sort of welcome to Birdtown signs. It includes this logo that you see on the paper at the gateways of the community. And just an ongoing sort of presence. We do a monthly newsletter that can either be linked to your website or content from that newsletter can be downloaded onto your own website or newsletter. So there's a constant feed of information from Audubon to the township. And then the township representatives from the EACs, they all get together once or twice a year, usually at Mill Grove, where I'm based, down in Audubon Village, and just exchange ideas, come up with new and innovative ways to explore and learn about nature and to teach people in their homes about the environment around us. So that's it in a nutshell, and happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, comments or questions from board members? Mr. Galloway?
No question right now.
Mr. Snipes?
Yeah, it sounds like what you're doing is great work. What would Falls Township need to do again to be part of the program?
Well, essentially it's a design for the EAC, so they take the lead on it. I'm asked this quite a bit. So the only staff time that would be required from the township is when we present information or give you articles and videos and things like that. It takes time for them to load that onto a website or whatever. Sometimes we put up signs around town, not just the street signs, but if we do a festival, we'll have special signs that often requires staff time. Sometimes we'll do projects within parks, and that also at times requires park staff to help out with that. Also on schools as well, sometimes school the school district maintenance people will help with projects on schoolyards as well. And we ask that the township, through the EAC, works with at least one school. We actually worked with an elementary school a couple of years ago here. Did a habitat garden with waste management, funding it. I was involved with that project. We ask that they get involved. We ask that they try to get people to register their backyard with Audubon. It's free for people to do that. It just ties them into this network, and they begin to getting the Birdtown flyer, which is our newsletter. We encourage the EAC to create events for people, and we sort of work together to do that. So that's the requirement.
So the EAC would take the lead, would run the programs, or would be your contact, and we would just direct them to do that. We're not making you're not asking us to pass a declaration of some kind, or
no. We sometimes get proclamations from municipalities, but it's not a requirement. It's nice to have, but we're not required.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, we actually have a Canadian geese problem in our township, so I'm hoping that this doesn't conflict with.
No, they're a pest.
Okay, because we spend
they become a nuisance.
$10,000, $15,000 a year to try to keep them out of
Oh
it.
yeah, well maybe we can help with new and innovative ways to do that.
Yeah,
but,
well, if you could, yeah.
Yeah.
Be great. No, other than that, that's all I had.
Okay. And I know the EAC's already done quite a bit of legwork with this, and I think they've kind of got us pretty well on the road to joining this, and it sounds like a neat idea. And obviously, as you said, it requires us to do some very kind of minor things, really, linking our website with some of the information you have so people can come on the Falls Township website, which is currently under reconstruction anyway.
I saw that.
So this might be good timing.
Yeah.
And just be able to link to the different things and activities. Some of the things you talked about, like the workshops, the regional things, are just for members of the public, correct? It's not
Yes.
just for EAC members, it's
Oh,
anybody.
that's right. We try to generate opportunities for the general public,
Okay.
including the workshops and public events. We'll go out bird watching. We'll do something at a park. We'll do restoration projects, things like that. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on in these 19 municipalities.
Yeah, and this area, and I guess we didn't necessarily know this a whole lot until we started dealing with the Biles Island potential, it really is kind of a major area for bird watching. We're on the flyway and everything
Yeah.
else.
That's right, Pennsylvania, and you're near the Delaware, so it's an important part of the Atlantic, what we call the Atlantic Flyway during migration. And that's really how the Audubon at Home program started about 10 years ago, is to address those birds that come through our area. How can we create a better habitat for them when they make landfall? A lot of birds migrate at night. A lot of people don't know that. And then they make landfall during the day, and they're looking for food and rest and places to hide out. And your backyard can be that place. And so that's really the idea of Audubon at Home.
Okay, interesting. And essentially the requirement of the township is this program, getting involved in this, costs $450.
Yeah, that's right. Skin in the
so-
game. It doesn't really cover. I mean,
Yeah.
the signs cost more than that.
Right,
But-
right. But no, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions, or any comments from members of the EAC? Anyone to add anything to what's been said?
I think it's a very worthwhile program. It also, for Mr. Sullivan, the engineer, it does count towards the MS4 requirements also, so it'd be a help there.
Okay, good to know. Okay, good to know.
That's right.
And obviously, thank you for the EAC members for being here this evening, and also for the work you put in on this. This is one of our boards that a lot of very, very good boards, but this board's been kind of together for a while now, and they've been really very active in a lot of things. So I appreciate all that work. Is there any public comment? See no hands. Okay, so I guess with this, I guess we'd be entertaining a motion to, I guess, maybe complete the application, which would maybe be the $450 to become a bird town.
So moved.
Seconded?
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, he did.
Thank you. Okay, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, we had a presentation at our last meeting in May from a company, PTT Water Adventures, that's going to be operating a kayak and canoe rental at the Falls Township Community Park on the lake. This is something new for the township, and we're sort of, I guess, a pilot program to see how this works. And they did a lot of explaining as to what they were going to do. And I said, unfortunately, none of that really got out to the public because of the problems with the video system. And so they were gracious enough to come back here, and we just wanted to give them a chance. Hopefully everything works properly this time. I know there was I think it was a good article in the paper about it, because I know some people had seen it and are talking about it. And they also were at the Falls Township Family Festival, the queue for the troops. They had a good display there, and I noticed some people over there looking at that. So if we could have Mr. Mulhar and Mr. Moyer come on up and just, I guess, recap a little bit of what we talked about last meeting.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting us back. So PTT, or PT Transformations and PT Water Sports have been running a kayak and paddleboard operation out of Lower Bucks in Bristol. So we've been doing kayak rentals or tours on the Delaware, and also paddleboard yoga in Silver Lake. We've been doing this now for 4 years. This is our 4th season going into it. We love the idea of trying to do something at the Falls Community Park, and so this year we are going to launch a rental You'll be renting kayaks, paddle boards, and canoes. And we have a poster here. For some people may not know what stand-up paddleboard is. So you're actually standing on a surfboard, an oversized surfboard, with an extended paddle, and it's growing in popularity, not just here, all over the country. So we're happy to bring it to Falls. It's Bob Moyer. He'll go over some of the other crafts that we have.
Okay, yeah, we'll have the paddle boards. We also have canoes, and we have a type of fishing kayak you pedal with your feet. So you can have the rod free about to fish, and you steer with your hands. So they're going to be really great for the fishermen. One of our goals is to allow some of the fishermen that hang out around the banks and areas like that to be able to go out in the water and do their fishing out in the water. So we'll have opportunities for that, as well as families to take your kids out canoeing. And we're able to take school groups, scout groups, summer camps, anything like that want to come out during the week. We'll also be able to do trips. Currently, our hours are going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday 2 to 7, Saturday 10 to 7, Sunday 10 to 7. And it looks like this Friday will be up and running, and it'll be our first weekend. We talked with your safety staff earlier today and went over what all the security, all the measures need to be taken to make sure that all our participants are safe. As far as wearing life jackets, not swimming, all of those kind of things. And I think we're all look pretty good, and we're all ready to go. So it took a little bit, but it's all together. Do you guys have any questions about?
Any questions or comments?
No, I just saw, was it a week ago Sunday, when you had your training set up down there, and it looked like it's going to be a lot of fun, and really look forward to seeing you guys set up on a permanent basis. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Do we get anything?
It's a great addition to the park.
Yeah, the comments, like I said, some people had seen the article in the newspaper and were commenting. Is they were excited. They kind of waiting. When are they going to start doing it? And this was, I guess, maybe a week after the meeting, so it was a couple weeks ago. But no, it should be fun, and Mr. Snipes said it should be a great addition to the park. I mean, obviously, there are people that go out right now with their own boats, their own private boats, and go out and they can canoe, or they can go out and fish and things like that. But this is sort of a different element that's been talked about for a while now, trying to do something like this. And obviously, with the building of the dock that's going to be down there, at some point, it would make this even probably more successful. So. Mr. Rocco.
Have you guys finalized the rental fees?
The rental fees are finalized. Currently, your guys' website is down, but we did start a Facebook fan page. It's Falls Township Community Park Boat Rental, and if you join that fan page, it has all the costs and all the information, how to contact us for trips or for scouts or whatnot. Roughly, it's about $15 a half an hour, $20 an hour. Some of our boats are more expensive fishing boats. They're going to be a little bit more cost. The pedal boats are actually more expensive, so they're going to be a little more cost too, but roughly $15 and $20.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is public comment. Mr. Gray's getting the public comment sheet. Speakers are reminded we have a 5-minute limit per person. A 45-minute maximum. Okay. Okay. All right, Roland Kenny.
What's that?
Good evening, Roland Kenny, Falls Township. I usually start off with Benghazi, but I'm not going to speak about that tonight because they're supposed to have a meeting on Wednesday about it. NFA should have kept quiet about that too. That I disagree with letting that out in the open. They do a good job. They should leave them alone. Other than that, I don't have much to say. Good night. God bless you.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle Corby, I think, is it?
were supposed to sign that. I'm actually here because of an ordinance, or should I wait till that's addressed?
That's up to you. I mean, you can speak then too. We allow, you can speak now, or you can speak later on when we get to the issue.
Twice? No. I mean, I can wait if we want to address it that way.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Kimberly Biderbeck? Same thing? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, same thing. Okay. All right, looks like Guido Mariani? No? Okay, well, that was easy. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? Public comment? No? Okay. All right, just Mr. Kinney. All right. Just keeping the streak alive. This is the Iron Man of public. It's the Cal Ripken of the public comment. All right. Item number 2 is a waiver of land development for a company on Newbold Road called Hucatech. Mr. Gray.
Yes, this is for Hugotech, waiver of land development. They are proposing to add an 800-square-foot canopy above an existing concrete pad. The location is west side of Newbold Road at Towpath Road in Penn Warner Industrial Park. Zoning is PIP. Representing the applicant tonight is Mr. Tom Hecker.
Thank you.
Evening, Mr. Hecker.
Members of the board, good evening. Tom Hecker on behalf of the applicant, Hucatech, as noted by Mr. Harvey. Hucatech is a local company. It's located at 99 Newbold Road. They employ about 50 people. They are in the thread manufacturing business. What this proposal is that results in the waiver of land development request is a request to be able to build a 20-foot by 40-foot canopy over an existing concrete slab that will provide some protection from the elements for the trash compactor. You might ask, why do we want to do that? And the reason is that what Hucatech does is it manufactures thread. There's pigment involved with that, and want to be able to control that pigment. And effectively, it is controlled through the canopy. It's collected, it's put into a system on site, and it's actually cleaned before that water is then released back into the system. So it's a way, I guess, of making sure that nothing enters into the public system that shouldn't enter into it. So, and that's really all there is to it. It's basically a roof on top of an existing concrete slab of 20 feet by 40 feet. We have received review letters from the township engineer. Those conditions in the review letter have been incorporated into the resolution. However, since the resolution, or as I should say, as the resolution was being prepared, Phil Kashner, our engineering consultant, had already responded to the outstanding conditions and resubmitted plans to Mr. Sullivan. So I don't know if he's had a chance to review them or not, but it's safe to say that the conditions in the resolution are all will comply items. I don't think that there's anything major, and this is a relatively minor application, and that's why it's been submitted as a waiver request. Any questions, we're happy to try to answer them.
Okay. Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
Mr. Sullivan's letter talks about how the stormwater is collected. Has that been answered to your satisfaction, Mr. Sullivan?
Not at this time, but Mr. Hecker has agreed to comply with all provisions in the resolution, so I'll take his word on that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rocco?
I have none.
Now, it is a very simple question. My question actually was, or a very simple application. My question was the one Mr. Snipes just talked about. You're covering up, I guess, one of the inlets for stormwater is going to be under a canopy, and what was going to happen with that in terms of where that water was going to be diverted to. That's what you're addressing, Mr. Sullivan, basically? Is
Yes.
That?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You want to explain that more? What we're doing in that regard?
Well, we're putting a trench drain in around the compactor pad to keep stormwater from entering into the existing inlet. And then the existing inlet, if water gets in there, it's being pumped into the sewer system eventually, but it will be cleaned by the time it gets through the process of the building.
Okay. And Mr. Sullivan, that's what you're understanding is? Is that
Yes, that's the understanding. The issue we had was kind of mechanical in nature. It wasn't clear how that was going to happen, but we knew that's the plan that they had.
Okay. Okay. All right, and all the other letters we have here, with traffic and also with the fire marshal's office, there really are no issues. So, as you said, it's pretty minor. Any public comment? See no hands. All right, so we were looking at Resolution 13-12, which would grant a waiver of land development for Hucatech, 99 Newbold Road, Marsville, PA. A mailing address, obviously here in Falls Township. Okay, is there a motion to approve Resolution 13-12?
So moved.
Second it.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Rocco. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom?
Okay, next item on our agenda, number 3, Mercer Court final land development. This involves the construction of about 50 townhomes on the property adjacent to the Township building, what used to be Brian's RV. Sales and business. Mr. Gray.
Yes, this is for Mercer Court, final land development, 166-68 Lincoln Highway. Representing the applicant tonight is Mr. Rob Gunlock.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Rob Gunlock here on behalf of the applicant. Just by way of brief background, we have worked over the last 2 years with Township staff and your Planning Commission on this plan. We did receive preliminary plan approval subject to certain conditions several months back. The applicant has been working to satisfy those conditions, and I believe they have addressed all those conditions, subject to some minor administrative cleanup items in the outstanding review letter of the Township engineer, all of which will comply. The applicant is here tonight requesting final plan approval subject to the outstanding review letters, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions? Board members were provided with an updated resolution, which, if approved, would be 1313. Comments or questions for Mr. Gunlock or Mr. Sullivan regarding this application? Again, this is final land development. This has already been through the preliminary stage. Mr. Galloway?
Yeah, just Mr. Sullivan, do you have any concerns?
All the concerns, as Mr. Gunlock stated, we've been over for the last couple of weeks, and we feel this resolution is ready for adoption.
Thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
Over the months we've been working on this, I think the board has felt good about it as it's proceeded, and I think people are happy to see this part of Route 1 redeveloped and bring a residential community to it. So I don't have any more concerns or questions.
Okay. Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, I have a few. So there's a pretty big paper trail, or a lot of paper here. Are these streets already planning on offering them for dedication? It seems like they are.
No.
They are not.
This will be a private street.
Correct.
Okay. Remington, Barrington Beach have an issue, it looks like, with the hardship for parking. If I'm reading this correctly. That's page 2, item 3.
It did carry over on the traffic letter they picked up from TPD, but that was addressed at preliminary plan stage. In fact, we worked in detail with your Planning Commission on revising the units and the driveways and the parking configuration on the plans back prior to preliminary approval. So I believe that was a carryover comment from the TPD letter they picked up.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then the last one was from the fire marshal, who, which is stated June 4th. There was a meeting on June 3rd, and it seems like he still has an issue with the fire sprinkler, with the, with the fire main.
Correct. We had a good meeting recently, and the applicant is revising the plans to go back to the prior layout with 2 extensions across the road and the elimination of the internal loop. So those plans will be revised as part of the cleanup items to put that back onto this submission.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, as Mr. Snipe said, we've had and as Mr. Rocco talked about too, we've had a lot of paper on this. We've been looking at this issue for a few years now, we agree that it should be a great addition to Lincoln Highway. One of the things I wanted to point out for a lot of the people that live behind the township complex, over the past few years, stormwater management has been an issue. Is it safe to say that with the construction of these townhomes that there'll be more control over that stormwater coming not only from that property but also as it goes through this property?
That is correct.
There's obviously a whole lot more right now. Is there any green area over there? It's all impervious surface, isn't it?
There'll be some green area as part of this project.
I mean, currently.
Currently, no. It's completely either gravel, paving, or just severely compacted dirt.
Right. So this would obviously, hopefully address that issue. And again, with the renovations we're looking to do on our own property, that should be addressed as well.
Yes.
Because I did hear from a complaint from one resident who lives sort of behind, where we are on Austin Drive, concerned about, what's going to happen with stormwater. Is already a stormwater issue, and it seems like we're really doing with this project and also with our own project, we're looking to address a lot of that. So I appreciate that. So okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one other question.
Sure.
We do have a copy of a letter here from a local business concerned about traffic, and this letter was addressed to PennDOT.
From the dentist?
Like. Yes. Right. Was there any response from PennDOT? I mean, I know we don't always hear very quickly from PennDOT, but was there any response or any concern that this issue being raised is one that we should look at?
I can tell you what I know. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I can certainly address that. We've spent almost a year or more working with PennDOT on these roadway improvements, and PennDOT has insisted on additional improvements out on Lincoln Highway. As part of that, the applicant did send notices around to the surrounding neighbors, and the only neighbor that expressed a question was the dentist across the street. Had a question regarding the existing roadway improvements there. His concern was his ability to come out of his parking lot and make a left. Right now, that's a median there. It's a rumble strip median in the middle there. So we'd submit to you that that's an illegal left turn that he's making out of there right now and going across the rumble median, but that's not our determination to make. We're not putting in a median roadway there. We're just restriping and adding a left turn lane. So whether or not he feels he can continue to go across the road at that location is up to him and others to enforce. But we gave certain notice, and he wants to continue to make his left out of that property. That's what he wants.
Okay,
There's nothing that we're building that's going to stop him from making the left. Whether or not others who
idea is
enforce
another,
those ordinances feel that people should be making lefts over median strips and stripe lines is for them to determine.
Yeah, it actually looks like his concern is pedestrian traffic from the townhouses to the golf course.
Okay.
Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, the letter seems to talk
So
more
it doesn't
about.
talk about left turn.
Yeah.
He doesn't mention his left turn at all.
Yeah.
That's what he expressed to the applicant when she met with him. He didn't mention about the pedestrian. But
Right.
look, we're doing our part with the sidewalks along the front. Our community has sidewalks on both sides, sidewalks along the front. This applicant's a proponent of the future sidewalks, hopefully all the way down Lincoln over time. It'll connect as other properties come in. We're hopeful that the township doesn't waive that requirement, makes the other businesses install sidewalks, and eventually they'll connect. But it's hard to do, Mr. Chairman, all of them at one time. You got to pick them off one at a time and then connect them as you go. So there will be sidewalks completely around the entire community here in front of every home and along Lincoln and connecting to the buildings on both sides.
Yeah, and his concern also addressed the children maybe crossing the busy road. And when you have a development, it's proximity to the highway.
Mm-hmm.
What you're going to do? I mean, his concern is they're all going to be running over to his mini golf. And, hopefully that won't happen.
Right. So,
okay.
Obviously this is final land development that you're looking at 50 residential townhouses Is there at this point any kind of an idea in terms of cost of what these are going to be, just for people that are curious as how much they're going to go for? Is there a ballpark for that?
I don't have those notes with me. I believe we did discuss that at preliminary plan approval. I'm sorry for not
Okay.
bringing
No,
that
I don't
back,
remember either. I
but,
apologize. Yeah.
We did provide architectural renderings and are anxious to start the site improvements within the next month or two.
Right.
And start to see homes in the ground shortly thereafter.
Okay.
So.
All right. That's all the questions I have. Any other comments or
Good,
questions?
thank
No? Okay. Any public comment? See no hands. All right. So this is Resolution 1313, correct? All right, which would grant final land development to Mercer Court, tax parcel number 13-005-001 and 13-005-002. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 1313?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, item number 4 is to consider approval for a Six Sigma review. This was something that was talked about by board members when we were looking at this year's budget. It does involve having sort of an outside expert come in and address how things operate in the township. This is something that Mr. Rocco really brought to our attention. This is something that's very common in private business. As a way of streamlining and efficiency, I'm going to allow him to do a little bit more explanation since he was the one who explained it to us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Six Sigma is a way to analyze and improve current processes. So in the private sector, you know, some of my past work, we've had initiatives where we've looked at the way we do things and asked some questions as to why and determine if that is the best process to follow. So one of the challenges that I've had since I've been on the board is how does our permitting and zoning process work? And I think one of the areas that we can look at, you know, from a process improvement standpoint or a process as is process, meaning how do we do it now before we even look at how we improve it, is the permitting process. So we have Jenna Alexander here. Jenna and I have done some things in the past or worked together in the past, so I'm familiar with her work and analysis on some of the Six Sigma stuff. So,
great. Thanks for inviting me. So I'll give a quick intro. In 2002, I started to work on Six Sigma projects, specifically in manufacturing. And in 2005, I became a Six Sigma black belt. And I specifically work on direct customer-facing business process. And in this case, that's what it is for Falls Township. Six Sigma, as Mr. Rocco said, it's a set of tools and strategies that are used for process improvement. The main goal is to remove variability from the process. And it sounds like today there's a lot of there's not expectations set for how long it's going to take, what your service levels are, what contractors and homeowners and business owners can expect in terms of turnaround of both permitting and zoning. So the main goal is to reduce variability. Through using process mapping, you can start to gain some visibility into your as-is process, which helps you reduce cost, increase revenue. The more quickly that you can get these things approved, the faster revenue starts to be generated from your tax base. It develops best practices, guidelines, so everybody knows what the expectations within the process are, both your internal staff and externally the members of the community or the businesses. In the end, really what it does is increase customer satisfaction. The process for Six Sigma is typically something called DMAIC. The first step of the project is to define what your problem is. And during that period, you're going to want to look at the data that you guys already collect, and I'm sure you do, and also look at anomalies in that data where certain things are taking a lot longer than you expected and others are happening a lot more quickly than you expected. So you can get an idea of why there's a great level of variability. And then you want to measure that data, right? That's the second piece of it. And then you want to analyze and investigate it. So you'll want to capture all the process within process maps. Process maps are a visual of how the process works, how the steps work. In some cases, value stream mapping is a good idea, because you can start to see what your resource cost is and how quickly you move and address service level issues. So for this project, the deliverables will be a project charter, which defines the scope, the resources, the subject matter experts within the township, and the timeline for delivery. The second part is to develop the current process and maps, and then once we do that, and that's through meetings with the subject matter experts, then they agree that this is how they see the process. And then what we do is we take it, we look at it, and we decide together, here's places we can improve on this process and reduce the time. When you do that, then we can take a look at it, decide where service level should be for the process, which then leads to greater customer satisfaction, and in this case, the taxpayers and businesses in the township. So, if you have any questions.
Okay.
Okay. I think, if we want to turn it over to the board for questions, I think that's fine. Thank you.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Galloway?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for the Six Sigma process. I know I have a brother who has some form of certification in it.
He's some belt.
Something along the way, yeah. And I do know that from my involvement with the Community Economic Development Commission, we had a meeting. I know Mr. Harvey was there, and Mr. Dent had dropped by. We had, over 30 business people there that night. And whether the complaints were legitimate or not, in the specific realm, in the general sense, it was alarming to hear them discuss their frustration in their dealings with certain departments in the township, rightly or wrongly. Right. And I think this is a great idea, and I really look forward to hearing about the results of your efforts.
In some cases, setting the expectation helps the customer understand where they're supposed to be and reduces complaints just because you set the expectation. Without an expectation, people's perception of whether or not they should be complaining
could be all over the board.
Be all over the place. So part of this is setting expectations and also measuring whether or not the complaints are accurate or need to be addressed.
At least we know that we're attempting to do something, and it's always it's good to know that we're looking to make our government more efficient.
Right.
In any event, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Jeff, did you say you've used this process where you've
yes.
worked before?
Mm-hmm.
And how did it work in the situation where you saw it work, where you saw it put into practice?
Right. I think the first thing you realize is you don't really know the process. You think you do, but if we had, like us 5 board members, we would say, well, how do you do this? We'd all have a different idea about how it actually occurs. So one of the things they'll do is figure out and agree upon the process.
The process for what exactly? For permitting, for going in and applying for a
Yeah,
permit?
whether you're if you're a resident, you come in, here's the first thing you do. You get the first thing you do is talk to them and say, this is what I want to do. You get an application, and then from there, you have a checklist, and all that gets set. So that's some of the problem that I have. I'm not sure exactly what happens.
Well, I was going to ask you, after you've gathered all the data, and then you sit down and you analyze the data, and you look for root causes?
Yes, that's part of the analyze phase. You start to look at cause and effect and root causes to figure out where you're failing. And in some cases, you can assign it to a department, a person, depending on how the process is kind of handled.
And all the stakeholders, all the people are involved in when you develop the plan, right?
That is correct. The subject matter experts are the stakeholders, and the only way to make a Six Sigma project work is to have all the subject matter experts be a part of it. Otherwise, once you want to make improvements, they won't stick, and you won't get through the control phase of the DMAIC process, which is putting it in place, getting it to stick. The other thing it does with the subject matter experts, it helps them understand what their expectations are, and so they can be held accountable to those expectations. When you don't have a process in place that someone can see and follow, they don't necessarily follow it, because it doesn't exist. So it's also good for your internal customers, your employees as well, to have a process to follow.
And then you have further steps where you would analyze the implementation.
Right, that's in
And
the control
you have
phase.
measurables for that?
Yeah, so when you're in the phase where you're analyzing it, you start to decide what those metrics are, days, the number of days it takes. Then you start to set service level agreements, which are internal but should be external to the community. It should take 30 days for a roofing permit, whatever it is, right? You start to set those, and then you measure after you put the improvements in place to make sure that you're really meeting those what you've agreed to. And if you don't, you go back and you check, and you figure out why you're now not making those.
And it's a system for continuous improvement, right?
Yes, Six Sigma. There's a portion of Six Sigma that is about continuous improvement, and it's kind of this do, plan, act, check thing. So when you get to the check phase, it's not meeting your expectations or you feel that there's other things that can improve, you go back to the beginning, take a look again, see if anything has changed, see if there's any other opportunities. And as part of this meeting with the stakeholders and subject matter experts, you're kind of teaching them how to do that. And a lot of people don't really think about, they kind of make a list of what they have to do rather than how to do it. So part of it is creating kind of standard operating procedures and helping them kind of now take on what my role would be.
Sounds exciting.
And you asked a question about previous projects. I've worked on lots of business process projects, specifically some quality projects. Quality in manufacturing is a tough area. Customers have a complaint, you need to address it. Sometimes you have to do a lot of work. You have to get your quality team involved. They have to look at the material. They have to make a determination about the material. Sometimes they have to go back to their supplier. It can take a very long time. If you don't have a process in place for that, it can take exceedingly long, and your customer now is waiting for their credit. So I've worked on projects around quality and creating quality databases that allow the time to shrink and improve the customer experience. So quality is an area I've worked in before, as well as technology business process, how you determine root cause. So I've worked in a lot of different areas in both manufacturing and just normal business process.
So in terms of our permitting procedures here in the township, what your work would be to help us analyze the way that we do it today, and how residents of the township react, whether they're happy, not happy with the way that we do it, and then to be making recommendations for how it could be changed, and then checking up to see whether those changes have actually made residents of the township more satisfied with how we do it.
I will provide tools so that you can check. So there will be some system in place where you're tracking, and I don't know what you have today to track your service level. So it would depend on what you have today, but we'll define some things that allow somebody within the township manager, somebody who's tasked with that, to check to see where they're making it or not making it.
Well,
and I would like input from business owners and
sure.
and residential customers.
Yeah, I should have said that, business owners as well. So whatever we can do to improve our procedures, I think, is a great idea. I'm not familiar with Six Sigma. I'm curious, what does the name Six Sigma mean? Where does it come from?
It's the number of errors in a process, and I mean, it comes down to the millionth. Six Sigma was invented by Motorola in 1985. It was based on Deming's theory of quality, which is plan, do, act, check. So Motorola created this entire system that kind of revolutionized the quality process. And Jack Welch is the one that kind of made it popular, and it's really the basis for how he took GE from where it was to where it is today. It's the process that he put in place and really made this really popular.
So just so we're clear, we would be doing this process for permitting and permit of zoning. How are we defining what we're applying this to?
looking at the permitting and zoning, basically permitting process, it's not, I mean, zoning obviously fits in there somewhere. If somebody comes in and they want to build, as we had a couple of projects here this evening, if it requires a zoning change, then obviously that's something that gets included. Not everybody who comes in for a permit, needs zoning. They might just be putting on an addition on their house. They might be doing, as you had here this evening, a canopy over an existing concrete pad. So they wouldn't necessarily need zoning, but they do need permitting. So I think just the whole process of coming in here and applying for those kinds of, improvements, whether it's large land development operations or relatively small, someone putting up a fence or something like that, it's looking at the whole process. And if the process is correct, then it doesn't really matter how large the project is. The process is always going to work the same way. Hopefully, it should work the same way.
Correct. You
So-
capture all of those types of permits and zoning.
Essentially, we'd be retaining Ms. Alexander to do this kind of study. Do you have an idea roughly how long you think it'll take? As you haven't started yet, so you're not sure.
I'm not entirely sure because I haven't seen, tonight you provided me with kind of a document that you guys had put together. So I'm not entirely sure. It would not exceed 80 to 100 hours, would be my guess. It's probably about 40 hours per kind of big process. But it's highly dependent on, what you have in place today. But I can't imagine it exceeding that.
Okay. All right, so this is obviously, someone who's a professional, someone who has experience, or somebody on our board has experience with retaining her as a sort of an independent consultant to come in and take a look at these process and make a determination and make some recommendations. Obviously, a very limited basis. We're not sort of hiring Ms. Alexander for permanently as part of our staff, but as a professional who's coming in to sort of help us streamline a major part of our operations. And as Mr. Galloway said, it is certainly something that all of us, it's a pretty common complaint we hear, and of course, we have to chalk some of it up to the fact that people are going to complain about something. You're always going to have people complaining about something. Right. And that's part of, and that's understandable. I mean, especially you're trying to do something on your home and it's already stressful, and something that we're asking you to do, which is required by law, just adds to the stress. But certainly you hear enough complaints that, and no system is perfect, and certainly we can try to make it as perfect as we can. I'm sure no municipality has a perfect system. We were talking earlier this evening before the meeting started. I wonder how many other municipalities are taking the step that we're taking to bring in someone who's an expert on this kind of process and take a look at how it works and just give us some ideas of how we can make it better. Probably not a lot of communities do that. So I'm glad that Mr. Rocco brought it to our attention. I think it's a great idea. Any other thoughts or questions?
No, I have
We'll
none.
open up the public comment in a second. No? All right, any public comment needed? See one hands or a motion to open public comment?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Dell?
Andrew Dell, Falls Township. As you know, the permitting has been a sticking point with me for the past 10 years. I've been busting your chops about the permitting fees. I don't look at our township residents as revenue generating or us streamlining our revenue or creating more revenue from the residents. My gripe has always been that you guys take a percentage of the job when these contractors come in. You ask how much a job's going to be, you guys get a certain percentage and fees and all this other stuff. As rich as we are at this township, there should be a flat fee for this stuff. There should be a roofing fee. There should be maybe a per outlet fee, just a nominal fee to pay our overhead, but to provide these people with a service so they're not doing it without a permit. Because 80% of this work's getting done without a permit now. The people that come for the permits, all the subcontractors I talked to, and I've talked to many, said you guys are the worst township to get a permit through, and they have to jump through more hoops than any other township they've ever been to. And it's not one or two, it's everybody I've talked to. And so I understand it has to be streamlined, but I don't think it's necessary to pay someone to tell you, lower the fees, drop the fees down.
It's not about just fees.
It's not about fees.
I mean, fees may be one thing. Of course, you're not going to be happy paying fees, but it's about knowing and understanding the process. So you're kind of missing the boat on this.
Well,
you could sit there and complain about the fees, and you may be right.
Yeah.
You know, I tend to agree with you on the drive-by roof inspection.
Yeah.
Why it matters, but this is about the process, not about the fees.
What
So,
process are you, what process
from
is,
start to finish, from the time you walk in this building and you want to initiate a conversation with someone regarding, I need a roof, or I want a fence, or I need a pool, or for a business who comes in here and says they want X, Y, and Z. But for the landlord, the guy was here a few months ago complaining that he couldn't rent his business. He has to give 90 days free. Well, is that true? I don't know. We don't know. So that's what we're trying to improve.
well, I guess the point is, we've been issuing permits for forever, for as long as the township's been here. I don't see the need to bring an outside company in for something that seems fairly straightforward and fairly simple. I mean, there's no point in paying consultants and extra fees when all it takes is a little bit of management. And we have plenty of management here. We don't need to outsource something that is pretty simple. You come in here, you pick up a form, you want a permit for your roof. They give you all the paperwork. I've been here several times. Here's the forms, fill them out, come back, get your permit. My problem is the cost that we take from these people. They're putting up a $50,000 addition. They're going to spend thousands on a permit. It shouldn't. They're improving their house in Falls Township. We're not like Tullytown. I don't want to be like Tullytown where we give everybody $5,000-$6,000 a year back on their taxes. But there's services we can provide and lower the costs so people actually improve their house and bring up the value of these neighborhoods and improve the look of these neighborhoods. So money's tight. People don't. It's hard enough to put a $25,000 kitchen in without spending $4,000 on permits and having to have the guy come back 16 times to inspect each separate component of each, is the drywall, the drywall's up, okay, now the tape inspection's here, and then, okay, we have to do the insulation. There's got to be a better way, and there's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's mostly the cost, not necessarily the process. Everyone complains about the cost, and not necessarily, there might be a few complaints on the length of time.
There's a lot of, I can tell you from the CEDC meeting, that was the majority of complaints, was on the time frame.
The vast majority of complaints we hear is about process, not as much about cost. In fact, and as much as you talk about us being outrageously priced, one of the things we do every time we ask Mr. Bennett, who's worked in other municipalities in this county, to take a look at costs, whether it's, for basic inspections, electrical inspections, whatever it is he compares with communities around us.
Yes.
He
I'm
looks
not saying
at
that
Bristol
you're far
Township.
above
He
or
looks,
far,
well, you did
all
earlier.
I'm saying is, with the money we have, there's a service we should be cutting the price because we have the money to do
we
so.
lose money every year on our code enforcement department. Every year. We are not making money hand over fist, and we lose money every year on code enforcement. It's because
You've said that to me before, and I find it entirely hard to believe. But
Well,
I don't have all year to sit there and audit your books. But for the prices you guys charge and for the money that you guys charge for that, I find it hard to believe you're losing money.
Well, we are. I mean, obviously, you have a gentleman over here who's our manager, who's one of the smartest people in the county when it comes to government finance, and he can back up. Obviously, and forever. I mean, going back as far as he's worked here, back to the late '90s. This is part that you're kind of arguing both sides of this too, because on the one hand you're saying there has to be a better way of doing this and having inspectors come out multiple times. Well, that's kind of what we're doing. We're looking at that, and if we can streamline it, then obviously that might make it easier. Though, if we can streamline the process and realize that some things are being duplicated and we're not thinking about, and we're not really, then maybe it's easier for us to say, let's take a look at our costs, and maybe we can actually save money, in terms of lowering fees, because we're not going to be taking a beating in terms of how much it costs to have inspectors go out and do these inspections.
I was just saying, with all the professionals we have on staff and all the people we have working here, we always seem to have to venture out to have someone to come in to tell us how to do something.
This is, I understand your point, but this is obviously a kind of expertise that none of us have. I mean, Mr. Gray doesn't have it, Mr. Clark doesn't have it, Mr. Sullivan doesn't have it. I mean, this is not something, and in many cases, talking to Ms. Alexander before this meeting, as she said, sometimes it's better to have somebody come in who's completely neutral with all of this.
From outside the culture.
Totally outside. They have no idea about, they haven't bought into this. This isn't their system that they've used for 5 years, and you're asking them to analyze it and make changes because they've developed habits, people in that situation, and everybody's like this. You're like it with your business. I mean, we're all like it based on whatever we do. We develop habits and ways we do things. We like the way we do it. It works for us, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yes.
Even if someone comes in and tells you, well, you know what you should do, there's a better way of doing this. Well, no thanks. So having somebody come in who's totally neutral, who has an expertise in this for a couple weeks to come in just to give us an idea of something that could actually change a lot of what we do, eliminate a lot of complaints, save money for not just for us, but for people coming in here, businesses and private individuals. I mean, to me, it's a relatively, for a couple $1,000s, it's a relatively, I think, logical step to take. I mean, I understand, the perception. Obviously, I've been here for, is it 8 or 9 years? I've been in, sitting here, and it's been an issue here ever since I came in. And
Yes.
Mr. Rocco talks about him coming in just the last couple of years.
And this is not a dig at Tom Bennett. I think he does
No,
a great
it is
job.
not.
I don't
It's
really
not.
think I'm picking on your code enforcement
No, I don't
people
think you are.
or the people behind the desk. I'm
Don't
just
think
saying
you are.
that every time, whether it's a business or a resident, whether they're complaining about time or money, it's a complaint, and no one ever seems happy. And all I'm saying is, with the waste management agreement, the new one that's going to be coming up for the new landfill, with the landfill money we have a lot of money, and I think it's a small amount that we would be spending or not charging, dropping our revenue a little bit to help people out there trying to improve their properties. And that's basically the gist of what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, so
Was there a concrete cost associated?
it is page 2 of Ms. Alexander's memo that she sent to us. Has her cost, her rate's $100 an hour. As she gave estimates before about how many hours it would take, obviously, catching her cold coming into this in terms of, don't want to ask her precisely how long it's going to take because she hasn't, seen what she's going to be taking on yet, so it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah, I think we budgeted 10,000 for this.
Was it?
I believe it was 10.
Yeah.
Was it 10? Okay.
So, I mean, I would think maybe the best thing to do would be cost not to exceed.
Okay, makes sense.
Board's comfortable there.
All right, that makes sense. Okay with the board?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right then, is there a motion to retain Ms. Alexander for the purpose of a Six Sigma review for an amount, ultimate total amount not to exceed $10,000?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Harvey, and the motion should include that it's consistent with her proposal. It's at $100 an hour.
Okay, I apologize. All right, so we'll amend the motion pursuant to Ms. Alexander's memo, which puts her rate at $100 per hour. So, Mr. Galloway, are you willing to amend that
Yes.
motion? Okay.
Amend the
Mr.
motion.
Rocco will second.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Ms. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Alexander, thank you for coming in. Okay. Item number 5 on our agenda is discussion on New Falls Road sidewalks. This is an issue that we've been discussing for several years. And obviously, we've had members of the public and a different discussion about how necessary it is to take a look at providing a walkway for people who are walking on New Falls Road. There are shoulders right now on New Falls Road. They're really in I guess a few isolated areas further closer to when you get into Thornbridge Shopping Center, that and up near the corner of Penn Valley Road, you do have some sidewalks, but I know I see people walking virtually every day. In many cases, it's students walking home from school along New Falls Road. And certainly it is an issue that the board has had concerns with. We've had members of the public come up expressing their concern about it being not a very safe situation. We did have our previous traffic engineers put together some conceptual plans that ranged from one sidewalk along one side of New Falls Road to 2 8-foot wide sidewalks going down the entire length of New Falls Road between St. Joseph the Worker and Penn Valley Road. I think a lot of the situation with those proposals were a lot more complex, a lot more expensive than what we were looking for. Tom Beach from Remington Vernick and Beach Engineers is our current traffic engineer, and he put together his own sort of very early conceptual plan here with this. what we're looking for this evening. We're not going to be sort of approving the construction of anything this evening. We're just kind of hearing some thoughts as to what he has. He's taking some direction from board members in terms of what we were thinking about, what things we'd like to see, concerns we have, possibilities. And he's put together sort of a rough conceptual idea, and he's given us an idea of some cost associated with going into some more depth and looking at this a little bit further. So, Mr. Beach, turn over to you.
Okay, thank you. As you noted, we have reviewed the previous studies that were done and tried to come up with, take a look at it and see if there was maybe a more cost-effective way of providing the pedestrian access to the residential areas. So we put together, utilizing a lot of their base plans, we looked at it and tried to come up with an idea. This would be from Hood Boulevard, Penn Valley Road, down to just past Vermillion Drive. From a practical standpoint, once you get past the Thorn Ridge Shopping Center on the south side, it gets very difficult to be able to put any kind of a path on the south side because of drainage ditch that runs along most of the road. So we kind of narrowed it down with recommendations based on placing a new sidewalk on the north side of New Falls Road.
And just for people, for perspective, the north side is essentially the side Vermillion Hills is on. So the side of the road with JoJo's and with Levittown Lanes, Bowling Alley, it's that side is the north side. So thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, so the first sketch basically, it takes it from the intersection, just past the intersection where the gas station is, down to about where the parking lot is for the high school, access to the fields. The only practical place to put a sidewalk here is actually right up along the fence line of the sports fields of the high school, because there's a large drainage ditch right along the edge of the road, and although you could put a sidewalk there, it would mean that you'd spend a lot of money piping or making some kind of an access over top of that ditch. So it's kind of from an impractical standpoint, it'd be very expensive to do that. So we kind of limited that, and again, we would pick up. Can we show this one or this one?
Either way, you don't have to worry about us. We'll show worry about, and you can take the microphone with you if you want.
So it might be easier so the public could see it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so basically this is the gas station on the corner. This is the parking lot here from the high school. This is the sports fields here with the fence line. So we would be extending down, running along the back of, right along the fence line of the sports fields, and then across the front of the parking lot. The previous consultant had shown a mid-block crossing. You can see it's a little bit harder on here because we're utilizing some of their base plans. It says remove that crosswalk. We're not recommending that you do that. They're very difficult to get approval from PennDOT for a mid-walk cross block, and we're not condoning it. We think it would be better for you to walk up to the light at Penn Valley Road and make the crossing at that point if you really need to get across to get in the Thorn Ridge Shopping Center.
So when you say mid-block crosswalk, you mean not at an intersection?
Not at an intersection, okay. Correct. So this plan is, with the exception of that crosswalk, is very similar to what the other consultant had. Flip to page 2, and this is really where some of the changes occur.
June.
Okay, so basically then it would continue across that parking lot down to Amelia Drive, and previous consultant, right now there's a curb line that runs in front of the ice cream place, the bowling alley, and the automotive store. It's a raised curb. It projects about 4 to 6 inches above grade. The previous consultant at that point was really forcing you out onto the road, into the shoulder of the road. We took a look at it, and what we think we can do is create a ADA compliant access point right at Amelia Drive, and then take about 4 to 5 feet behind that curb line, leave the curb in place, and designate that across the existing paving as a sidewalk area. Now, we could do that, and there's a number of different ways we could delineate it. You could paint it, you could stamp it, you could, you could actually replace it with concrete. But what we would do is create that sidewalk directly behind that curb. To do that, we would have to look at the 3 businesses there, that being the ice cream, the bowling alley, and the automotive store, and look to maybe restripe their parking lots and push back. Again, we want about 4 or 5 foot right up against that face of that curb. It appears to be within the right-of-way, so there shouldn't be any issues with right-of-way. It's just a matter of pushing them back a little bit. The ice cream store, it makes it a little bit tighter there along the front, the way they park. But we would put, we're probably recommending that we would put like parking bumpers to help delineate the commercial side of the sidewalk, and then you have the curbing on the other side. This curbing then would connect up to the new sidewalk that's going to be proposed at the new child care center, which is under a development, and that would be completely built by the developer. Okay, the next sheet kind of shows the new learning center, child care center. That all again will be built into, will be constructed by the developer up to his property line. Then we would continue that, the new sidewalk. This would probably transition at this point to concrete, so because in front of the learning center, that's all new concrete sidewalk. We would continue that across the next shopping center down. The thing that, again, we looked at in that shopping center, there's some light standards that are in the way. The previous consultant had looked at actually taking away parking spots, creating little islands, and totally moving the light standards into those islands. We feel that either by maneuvering the sidewalk around it or slightly moving the standards closer to the commercial buildings, that we'll be able to continue a sidewalk along the whole front of that. One more. Okay, and then the final block is you go past the shopping center, then continue it down and connect up to the existing sidewalks on Vermillion Drive. We would at Vermillion, we would have crosswalks across Vermillion, also across New Falls Road that would connect over to Thorn Ridge Pass with new sidewalk up to about the right-of-way of New Falls Road. So the real changes here would be, again, the Child Development Center is going to install the concrete. And then in front of the ice cream place, bowling alley, and the automotive store. Again, we feel we can significantly lower the price by trying to utilize what is existing there now and just with concrete bumpers and some kind of sidewalk delineation, make that a nice, safe haven for sidewalks.
Okay. All right. And the board members have a proposal in front of them for just some preliminary work or some work, just the engineering and sidewalk design, topographical surveys. And the amount submitted is $24,604, which would be good to go into the depth and really start looking at this in depth. And that's something we can take up tonight if we choose to. We come back, it depends on how board members feel. Let's have comments or questions for Mr. Beach from board members. Mr. Galloway?
Not at this time.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. We've been talking about this for a long time. In all the areas you've shown, at least on the papers that we have that show the new, I'm going to call it the new sidewalk in red, is this all newly paved area, or are you saying that some of the areas are already paved and they're going to be striped or designated or somehow highlighted so folks will know that that's the safest place to walk, or how are you seeing it?
It would all be new asphalt, with the exception of what kind of treatment you'd want to do in front of the bowling alley, the automotive store, and the ice cream shop. We kicked around some ideas. I mean, you could paint it. You could run a parallel stripe on the inside, and then some kind of sidewalk designation. You could stamp it. You could have stamped asphalt. You could put freshly, you could mill off 1.5 inches and put on a brand new asphalt. There's a lot of different treatments that you could potentially do it, and it all depends on, how much you'd be willing to spend for those. So we'd want to make it obvious that it is a sidewalk area, so we want to give it some kind of a treatment.
And you were saying in front of the stores that might be different, not asphalt?
Probably be concrete.
Concrete, just because it fits more with what already exists there, or?
Yeah, it's once you make that transition from in front of the Child Development Center, then all the way down to Vermillion Drive, you'd have concrete, and then you go back to asphalt. Wouldn't really make sense. So it would look better, I think, if you just took the concrete sidewalk all the way down.
And most of this is attempting to keep people obviously away from the road. So wherever you can, you're tucking it back behind, I'm going to call them the impediments, instead of moving it to the roadway side of it.
Correct, yes. Like I said, the previous plan kind of looked at actually making you walk along the edge of the road.
Right.
In front of like the bowling alley. Having done it myself, it's not a real comfortable feeling. I think you're better off being behind that curb line.
When I've been out there on New Falls Road, most of the people seem to be walking on the north side, but sometimes there are kids walking, bicycling, or other people on the south side. How are people going to move from the south side to the north side, or are they going to have to go to one of the intersections and then to safely do that?
The safest way to go is to one of the intersections. I do know that not on as heavily traveled road as New Falls, anytime we talk to PennDOT about mid-block crosswalks, they really they get their backs up. They really don't want to see them, and really, it can be a safety issue. The speeds and the traffic on New Falls, to try to put up the delineators, yield to pedestrians in a crosswalk at that location. Generally, we found people really don't stop for pedestrians in a crosswalk, don't yield to them. Signs help a little bit, but again, it's safer for you to go to the intersections.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rocco?
I had the opportunity to walk with Mr. Beach on New Falls Road, so I'm pretty familiar with it. I think the goal was really to create the safest solution for the cheapest cost. We were looking at You gave a range, I think, some of the ones earlier. The last
Yeah.
one I looked at was like 785, I think.
Yeah, right. One of the costs was about almost $800,000.
800,000, so. And, you know, the idea of coming up with an alternative for in front of these, the ice cream store and the bowling alley, and maybe, like you said, like a stamped concrete would be pretty obvious that that's a walk, so there's probably a lot we can do. I know there's been some discussion on how heavily traveled this by pedestrians the road is. To me, every time I'm on there, there's, you know, all hours of the day and night, there's people walking that road. So I did have the same concern as Mr. Snipes, though, if you recall. How do you keep people off the Thornridge side? I guess south side or?
South side, right?
South side,
yeah.
So maybe we could do something with signs or?
Yeah.
It's pretty limited on the south side. There's not a whole lot of shoulder over there, and there's a ditch right along for a large portion of it. There's a large ditch there, so it's a lot safer to be on the north side. Even now, today, it's safer on the north side than it is on the south.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm not sure these, you know, some of the kids seem to care. You see them walking, they're practically on the line, so.
Right.
Right.
But I like the idea, and I actually feel like it's a necessary thing to do, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know one of the concerns, and you've talked about it already, with the first plans we took a look at, the walkways were really the shoulders. You know, and the really, the reason I didn't really like the plan, and I wasn't really in favor of the previous plans, was that to me, that wasn't really safe. And if there's no impediment from a car just sort of drifting, and you're on the same surface as the cars are, there's nothing there, and we talked about guardrails at one point. We were told the PennDOT would never really allow us to put up guardrails on the side, even if it was to sort of shield people walking on a shoulder, even to create, you know, sort of a safe walkway for people. That would be no way we could do it. And so this, putting people behind a curb, it helps, of course, that the learning experience is going to be constructing sidewalks there. So that's obviously a big chunk that we don't have to build. And connecting it to, you know, the Thornridge Pass and Vermillion Drive, you know, there are already sidewalks there that as soon as they hit that curve, they stop. And you can see, just going out there, and you know, you could probably see it from your car, you don't have to get out of the car, you can see that curve walking out of Vermillion toward Vermillion, you know, Square Shopping Center is worn out, you know, from people riding bikes and walking. They've already just worn the grass right out. You know, it's a couple inches lower, actually, you know, from kids riding their bikes that much. And so clearly people are walking on the sidewalks, and then they want to go walking toward the high school, but there's no sidewalk, so they've worn out, you know, all the geography that's there. So connecting sidewalks to that is just, you know, just obvious. But I agree, you know, we definitely going to need signage on the Thornridge side to really keep people off of that. You know, I know it is mostly, again, I see, you know, high school kids. I mean, sometimes going to work in the morning, I see high school kids walking to school, and I see kids walking home when I'm coming home. People walking their dogs and things like that, and it's, you know, I mean, we've been lucky, I think, very, very fortunate. We've had accidents in Bristol Township regarding people on this road. One just, a year and a half ago, somebody was killed, you know, by some, you know, walking in an area where there are no sidewalks on Newfield Road. And I know that there is an effort to try and get some state funding for this in Bristol Township, and hopefully we might be able to sort of dovetail with what they're doing and maybe look to try and get some, see if we can do some kind of funding, you know, get something from the state to help us do this in conjunction with what Bristol Township's doing. I know there's an effort there. I know Tina Davis is deeply involved in that. I know Representative Galloway has been talking with her about that, and I was talking to him about the issue too. So, but I appreciate your work on this. And I think it makes sense, sort of piecing together pieces where there aren't sidewalks, doing it in a more cost-effective manner, and try to make it as safe as we possibly can. So we'll open up to some public comment, get some public comment, and then we'll make a decision about our next step at this point. Any further board comments or questions this time?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the timeline. You know, just hypothetically speaking, is it a 6-month, 9-month, 3-month?
As far as the design?
Yeah, no, the whole show.
Well, you're probably looking at 60 to 90 days to complete the design, coordinate with the township, and submit to PennDOT. They're probably looking at a 60-day review. It will be a highway occupancy permit. They're generally, their stance has been in the past, it's a sidewalk, so as long as they're not paying for it, they don't really care, as long as it meets their standards. I would say within 60 days after that, you'd be able to get the HOP permit from the PennDOT.
That's like 150 days. And then how long would construction be?
You could do it quicker if you need to.
No, I'm just trying to get a general idea. I'm not putting any pressure on you. And then how long do you think the construction phase would be? I guess would that be the next phase?
You're probably looking at 90-day construction, max. Depends on how much we have to do with the electrical, how involved that gets with moving the light standards and everything, but it should be pretty doable within a 90-day period.
Right, so we're looking at 8 to 9 months from the time if we continue to move phase from phase, and I guess PennDOT doesn't give us a hard time.
It's reasonable.
Right.
Okay.
It's a big if.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big if. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I might, just want to clarify. So what we're looking at is the engineering costs tonight of $24,604.
Correct. If we're comfortable with that, moving forward this evening, just on the engineering part of it.
And the total construction, which would be separate, is $225,000 contingent upon being able to use the available surfaces that are out there.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I do have one last.
Sure.
The businesses you mentioned that might be affected by this with maybe moving, restriping of parking lots and such, have we reached out to them? Have we had conversations with them yet?
We haven't yet. We did look at, and again, without having done any survey field work yet, we did look at approximately where they're located and what impacts they would have. And the bowling alley, they have perpendicular parking and a very, very wide aisle. And it's way beyond what they need between the two perpendicular parkings. The automotive store, they actually have a big crossed out X section of their current striping, and which is like a no park zone. We'd have to encroach a little bit on that. Like I say, we're looking, because it's right up against the curve, we would like to have at least 5 foot, preferably. We could probably live with 4 foot because that curb sits back way off the shoulder of the road, but we prefer to have 5 foot. So we're looking at taking 5 foot and shifting his striping over a little bit. Have not touched base with them yet. That's something that would have to be done, and also with the ice cream place.
The bowling alley wouldn't lose any space, and it sounds like we would actually create some efficiencies maybe at the automotive center, and then the only crunch would be at the ice cream shop at Judge's.
Ice cream is, yeah, it's a little bit tight because of just the configuration right there, but again, we're looking at 4 or 5 feet, so we think we can make it work. So,
I mean, hopefully everybody, including business people in the township, will be in agreement that we need safe places, especially for kids to maneuver, and hopefully if it helps the kids to get to the ice cream shop, it's good for business. But I do think it's worth reaching out to them so they don't hear this by somebody who watched this on the TV and then says, hey, do you know what they're doing, and blah, blah, blah. And we haven't had the courtesy to talk with them. So I think we should do that sooner rather than later.
Like tomorrow, you're saying?
Yeah. But I don't know where it should go in the process, because I don't know what exactly is going to happen next. So, but.
Okay.
All right, is there public comment? See a few hands. Motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Isn't there a pizza place there, too?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Mr. Kinney?
I have nothing to say about sidewalks. You want to put them in, put them in. I don't like this. It's not on here. It's on here. It's not on here.
Is that an agenda you got
This is the one you get from the township before tonight.
before
This-
tonight?
It
It's
wasn't
in
available
here.
till.
It was,
But the problem is, you only have 10 of these put out there.
okay.
Got 20 people.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was listed, it was an updated agenda, which is actually out, but if you got that earlier, obviously, yeah, you're right, it wouldn't be on there, it was something we added. We weren't sure Mr. Beach could make it.
No, this
He's-
I got back. I got both these things back here tonight. Both these.
All right, there should be an updated agenda, so I apologize for that.
Huh?
Item 5, is it on there?
On here.
Yeah,
Yeah, is it on there?
take Andy's.
What do you see?
Yeah, there's a different.
Yeah, it was an older one, so it got mixed in, unfortunately, with the newer one, so I apologize. Obviously, it was not intentional that you would get the,
Man, I get when I don't get it straight. Right, son? He knows. Okay, thanks.
all right. Mr. Dell?
What happened to that traffic study we did 2 years ago with traffic planning design, like $50,000 traffic or sidewalk study for New Falls Road? Did we do anything with that?
That's largely what Mr. Beach is operating off of, a lot of that plan. So he is, but that was even still limited. Their concept was really, they were given free rein to just do whatever they wanted to and look at all these different options, and they gave us 5 different scenarios. We really are narrowing down what Mr. Beach is being asked to look at. TPD wasn't asked to do any kind of work with PennDOT. They weren't asked to really draw up any kind of rural hardcore plans. Essentially, the plans you see are the ones that obviously we paid for when Mr. Beach was using to sort of create sort of a.
Is this traffic
hybrid.
planning and designs plans?
It's essentially it's you know, he's using all their measurements, and he's changed parts of it, as he said. He didn't stick with everything they did. He's changed some of it.
Okay. So we.
But in terms of where the roads are and where the businesses are, who owns this parcel, who owns that parcel, where the utilities are, how wide the road is,
Yes.
all that's all, yes.
I think it's very important you talk to those businesses down there because they do have very shallow lots. They don't have, especially going off of memory, that mechanic shop seems like a really tight
Yeah.
parking lot, and you take 4 foot out of that guy's parking lot,
right?
He's got problems. And the bowling alley, I know it looks, I mean, you start squeezing 4 feet together, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you try parking a pickup truck, well, you know, you have a pickup truck, you pull into one of those spots and try to back out without hitting a car behind you, you have some problems. So I would definitely be very cautious and reach out to those guys and tell them what you're trying to do, because you're going to upset some people over there. I'm
The
sure.
service shop will actually gain spots if we restripe their parking lot.
Who will?
The service shop,
The
the auto
auto
shop.
shop place.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because right now they've got cars sort of parked pretty much anywhere they
Yes.
want. And it's not clear, as Mr. Beach said, it's one of the things we have to kind of survey first, because they're probably in the right-of-way. They're probably parking their vehicles and they're probably storing them, not parking them in a right-of-way, which, you know, there's a little bit of question about that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's something we plan on doing. You know, and clearly we'll make them aware of the fact that we're looking at this. As Mr. Snipes said, if it's going to increase foot traffic, you know, safely.
It's going to stop at Vermilion Drive and Thornridge.
Right.
That's where
Correct.
it stops. It
It's
doesn't
not-
go towards St. Joe's.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Mariani?
This takes me back to May 2011, and at that time, the cost was projected at $995,000.
That was, yeah.
What we were looking at. What I still don't get is what the real total cost of this project is going to be. And I said before, I'm going to say it again, sidewalks and trails should be built in areas where a need can be clearly established. I haven't seen anything or a documented estimate of need and the probable use if we build this. I know you've said it before a number of times, you see kids walking along New Falls Road. I clocked New Falls Road for 6 months, 6 times a day, from 7 to 8, from 12:30 to 1:30, from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and the largest number of people or pedestrians I counted at any given time were 2. Once I saw 3 people walking there. So you say, what are the circumstances are there that indicate a need for these pavements? I see no worn paths indicating substantial pedestrian use between paved areas. St. Joseph, the school, St. Joe's, the worker school, is no longer there. The church may be closing soon. There are no recreational areas or developments that would generate a large volume of pedestrian traffic in the area that we're talking about. There's a scarcity of population that indicates an absence of need. Even if you built that pavement, I don't see any back and forth between neighborhoods. Now, public and private entities who design and construct sidewalks or trails that connect are going to have to comply with ADA regulations. He pointed that out. You're talking about a 5-foot pavement because you have to have at least 60 inches for turnaround every 1,000 feet, and I'm not going to get into all of those things that are listed there. What I'm looking at and what I think is going to happen, because I'm going back to 2011, when we built this thing here, it's not going to be long before we're going to require pavements on both sides of New Falls Road, and that's what I think the object of this thing is. And before you're done, you're not going to stop at $225,000. I don't consider this a safety issue because those people who want to walk should use the streets and the sidewalks that are already provided, which are parallel to New Falls Road, not only in Falls, but also in Bristol Township. And those streets and those pavements are less than 20 yards away from New Falls. New Falls Road was deliberately constructed as a motorized use road. Why you want to turn it into a pedestrian walkway, I don't know. The difference between the houses, the schools, the stores, and the public transportation are great enough to discourage walking and to, travel by motor vehicle. The Federal Highway Administration guidance on accommodating bike and pedestrian travel exemptions reads, when the cost of accommodation is excessively disproportionate, which this is, to the need and the probable use, and a documented absence of current and future need is not produced, and it hasn't been, there's no need to build this thing. That's where I think we are, and I think it's just an unnecessary expenditure. Briefly, about 10 years ago, PennDOT created a half-mile, right where you work at that tech school, a half-mile pass on the road between Holly Drive and 7400 block of New Falls Road in Bristol Township, across the street from the school. Senator Tommy Thompson spoke with PennDOT about possibly creating a paved blacktop pathway all along New Falls Road. PennDOT said they were interested, and they did show interest in that. So I would say, why don't we get together with Tomlinson, McElhenney, Galloway, and Tina Davis before we start spending money and tearing things apart. Let's see if we can get PennDOT to do that, and it'll probably be something better than what we want. Briefly, just to answer your question, Mr. Galloway, you're talking about $24,604 for this. However, that's for estimated engineering fees not to succeed basis. Go back to where it says exclusions, and then you have 7 other areas that, that are going to be added onto those costs. You see where I'm talking about?
They could be
so
added on.
It's not $24,000. Before you're done, I'm telling you, before this whole project is done, you're going to be pushing $1 million. I am, you keep laughing. You're the one that proposed $995,000.
No, I never proposed it, actually, Mr. Guido,
Well,
Ms.
that's
Marini.
what it was going
And
to
quite
cost.
frankly, I don't, of all the times you got up and spoke, I'm not sure I've ever disagreed with you more. I mean, you and I, agree on some things and disagree on some things. I'm not even
Three or
sure.
more things that we disagree with.
You're right. I'm not even sure we're talking about the same township at this point. You talk about the fact that there's nothing attractive that makes people walk. Well, I have a high school, Levittown American baseball fields, a couple ice cream parlors, a daycare center that's being built. You say there's no one who lives in the area, the population isn't there. Well, no one lives in Vermilion Hills or Thornridge?
I live
You
in
talked.
Thornridge.
Wait. You talked about Thornridge Shopping Center is there, Vermilion Hills Shopping Center is there. You talk about the fact that you see no worn out areas. Where I just gave you one where you can check it tonight if you want to. You'll see it in the dark how worn out it is going from Vermilion Drive onto New Falls Road. You talk about parallel sidewalks that are 20 yards away from New Falls Road. I don't know where that is in Vermilion Hills once you pass where the shopping center is. There is no parallel, sidewalk on a road that's, 20 yards away from New
This
Falls
is-
Road, or in Thornridge for that
Yeah, man.
matter. So
We're all, look, I don't see all these kids walking on there, but then again, I don't hear voices either. So, I mean, I did it 6 times a day for 6 months. Come on, guys. The
Marini.
traffic isn't there.
Well,
Okay.
I disagree with you. I think, but in,
we've done
in
that
terms
before.
of, we have.
We have.
And we have looked at, and we're talking with, in fact, Mr. Galloway, Representative Galloway, sorry, confusion. Representative Galloway contacted me a couple weeks ago and was looking for ideas because this transportation bill that you see being advanced through the state legislature, looking for ideas of projects in Falls Township that could be addressed with this, and we gave him a couple different options, including this, which we thought about tying in with what Tina Davis is doing in Bristol Township, which makes sense. The sidewalk you're talking about building in, or they was built in Bristol Township by the tech school, was built in starting after 2000 because a student was killed.
A student was killed there at an apple tree.
Right.
Okay.
And so that was
but
the issue. And
what I'm
now
saying
we
is-
don't want that to become the issue here. We don't want there to be all of a sudden now someone wants to spend the money because somebody got killed.
No.
We'd rather do it ahead of time.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's going to get killed if they pay attention to what they're doing.
Well-
That is a motorized highway. You
Yes, it
shouldn't
is.
be walking on a motorized highway.
Well.
Period. See, we disagree again.
But we're trying to give,
a little bit.
But people are going to do it, and and I know people are going to do it no matter what we tell them to do. And I think we're looking at a way to do it. And the reason we didn't build it
I'm not
was
looking for
because
a
it
way to
was-
encourage people to do things they should not be doing.
they're already,
Shouldn't be doing there. They shouldn't be walking there. Let me tell you something. It was not too long ago. A guy was killed right there on Penn Valley Road, right near New Falls Road.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. He was walking on the roadway, and there are pavements on both sides of that roadway.
and he was in the crosswalk, I believe.
No. On both sides, he was walking along the roadway, according to Lieutenant Ward.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Other comments, questions? No, see no hands. Okay, motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, so what we have this evening, proposal from Remington, Vernon, Beach to take a look at, or do the design work engineering services not to exceed $24,604. Mr. Mariani mentioned exclusions, which are standard in virtually all bids like this, simply because, for one, obviously, one of the exclusion is that the Learning Center will be building their sidewalks, which they are, so that's something that, if something happens and they don't build it, then that's obviously not something they have any control over. And other issues have to do with state permitting. We can try to predict what the state will charge us in terms of permitting or what studies they'll make us do. We don't think there's any wetlands in the area, and so one of the exclusions is if the state, for some reason, insists we do a wetland study, on a state road, then obviously that's something we're not necessarily thinking we have to do, but you never know. Is it the wish of the board to move forward and approve the $24,604 for Remington, Vernon, Beach?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Beach, thank you very much. And it's good public comment. We're going to take a short recess before we come back. It's about 9:05. Moving on to item number 6. Following, last year, obviously a lot of events, violent events and tragedies involving firearms around the country caused a lot of communities to stop and think about different ways to approach this issue. Clearly, there was a lot of ideas, state, national, local levels all around the country. One of the things that has been done in the past in Bucks County, Bristol Township, and Salem is the idea of a gun buyback program. The Board of Supervisors asked the police department to essentially just give us some ideas, put together a plan as if we were going to move forward with something like this. What would it look like? How would it work? That it's been done to an extent. Tonight, we're just going to hear some of the ideas that are going to be that were developed by the police department, and at some point, most likely at our meeting in July, we'll make a final determination as to whether or not this is a program we move forward with, and when, and answer some other questions. So this is a discussion amongst board members and with the police, and obviously with members of the public. Mr. Clark, Mr. Gray, I don't think I missed anything. And we have Sergeant. Go ahead, sorry.
Yes, Sergeant White is here from the Falls Township Police Department to discuss this further, and Lieutenant Henry Ward.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening. The police department's had the opportunity to review some plans that were used by other agencies in recent gun buybacks, some of the ones that Mr. Harvey mentioned. And we have put together a preliminary plan, which basically will include the personnel required. The preliminary plan would call for 1 command officer from the police department, a supervisor, 8 police officers, an evidence custodian, and 3 clerks. In addition to which, we've put together recommendations for the equipment that'll be needed, site location, and the manner in which the firearms would be collected and secured safely. Part of what still needs to be decided would be to determine some financial issues, to include how much each gun would be purchased by the township for, and whether or not to categorize the firearms as they're collected, and if so, what prices should be paid for each of those categories.
Okay. And just give us, I know, Ben, I think you were involved a little bit, or talked with some of the people in Ben Salem about the program they did.
That's correct. I was there on the most recent buyback. I was there as an observer.
Okay, and they did like sort of a 2-day buyback on different, I think it was 2 weeks apart, or a week apart, or a month apart, something like that?
They were 2 weeks apart,
2
yes.
weeks
They
apart.
did two different Saturday afternoons.
Okay. Just talked about categorizing weapons, obviously the different, types of weapons people could be turning in. What did Ben Salem do, if you remember, in terms of categories?
They broke them down into 3 categories. The top or most expensive category included just assault rifles. The middle category was semi-automatic handguns, and the bottom or least expensive category included revolvers, rifles, and shotguns. And the vast majority of the firearms that they collected were in that bottom least expensive category.
Okay. Okay. Again, but very, very kind of preliminary plan, as we said before. I want to give board members a chance to ask some questions. Sergeant White, and if necessary, Lieutenant Ward as well. And then again, we'll open up to public comment. So comments or questions, Mr. Galloway?
Not at this time.
Mr. Snipes?
How would we advertise this? How do we let people know that we're doing this so that we reach the people that we want to reach? And we're trying to reach specifically Falls Township residents, or who is allowed to come?
Right. Well, would be anonymous. Obviously, we would not be asking for identification. There's a concern of keeping it. Obviously, there's no way to sort of keep it within just Falls residents if we're doing it anonymously. One of the ideas raised was just to make sure one of the officers, or a couple of the officers that Sergeant White talked about being needed that day could be in the parking lot. People that pull in with an out-of-state license plate could be told this is really just for Pennsylvania residents. that's certainly something we could do. In terms of advertising, I mean, obviously relying on newspapers. I know there was a story today. Certainly we have the Township channel and the websites. What ideas did Ben Salem have in terms of what they did? Do you know?
Similar ones, the ones you just mentioned, in addition to flyer distribution.
Okay. So, anything else other?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, can you explain what you do with the firearms once you collect them? It looks like you destroy the ones that aren't good or aren't functional.
Virtually, they all get sent away to be destroyed. There is a center, I believe, in Pottstown that Ben Salem had used to ship them all up there and have them all destroyed.
Right. Do you recall what Ben Salem's, how much they paid out, by any chance?
As far as what they were paying for the
Yeah,
firearms?
I mean, their total over the 2 weekends.
I do have the numbers. I don't have them in front of me tonight. If memory serves me correct, I believe they were paying $50 for the bottom tier. I think it was $100 for the middle and $200 for the assault rifles.
Do you know what the total was for all the 2 events?
I don't know the dollar amount. I know that they collected over 300 firearms, though.
Yeah. Was it 60? I want to say it was something 60,000, something like that. I'm not sure if that's right or not. It might be high.
I was thinking,
Was it more than that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I'm thinking they had 2 days. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it was in today's story, actually, in the paper, but I don't remember the statistic.
Did you guys get more than you were expecting at them events?
I think they had an idea of what they were going to be collecting because they had done them in the past.
No.
But I know that they did not get to the point where they ran out of funds to purchase their firearms.
Yeah, they have a casino in their backyard.
Right. And Ben Salem is twice the size of Falls Township in terms of population. Not that only Falls residents would be coming to this, but still, when you add together Falls Township, Lower Makefield, I think even if you add in Marsville, we might be roughly what Ben Salem's population is. So it's, it's something to think about. Obviously, it's not something we've done before here, so it is very much kind of an unknown in terms of what to expect.
Yeah. Has anyone in the close or surrounding municipalities done this?
Do you know of I know Bristol Township did one a couple of years ago, not recently, right?
That I'm aware of is Bristol, Ben Salem, and Trenton.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the one in Trenton was like a county-wide program.
Mercer County, yes.
Right, Mercer County program. Okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering, maybe we can reach out. I mean, is there an opportunity that we can get together with, well, not Tellytown, but Lower Make or Middletown and try to, have a joint effort?
Like a regional kind of thing?
If they're going to come from the surrounding municipalities anyway.
Different areas.
Yeah.
Certainly it's possible. I mean, obviously, run into a cost issue. Are they going to be able to sort of put forward the money?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sergeant, in terms of timing for this, I know there was some discussion about when to do this. Ben Salem did it on a Saturday. Would that be the recommendation from you guys as well on a Saturday?
Yeah, I think that's the day of the week that we would get the best turnout for.
Okay. I know that Lieutenant Airy was talking about looking more toward the fall.
Yes.
Rather than doing something this summer. What's the reasoning for that?
More than anything, probably just time to advertise and allow people to prepare for it.
Okay. All right. And it gives us obviously some time to discuss and figure out what we want to do. As you're saying, clearly between revolvers, semi-automatic pistols, hunting rifles, shotguns, assault weapons, there are different categories. What do you offer people for whatever type of weapon? Of the weapons collected at Ben Salem that you're aware of, would it be fair to say that a good number of them were inoperable?
They weren't inspected to the degree that you'd really be able to determine that. But I would say a vast majority of them appeared to be hunting rifles, old hunting rifles that people weren't using anymore. Whether or not they're operable, I don't think we really ever made that determination.
All right. I know that was a concern, was you could have people just turning in weapons that don't work. They're not going to get anything for them if they go to a gun store or sell them privately or Craigslist or something else. But, in my mind, even a gun that's inoperable, unless you're highly trained, you're not necessarily going to be able to tell it's inoperable. So it could still be used, to commit a crime. You point a weapon at somebody, even if it's inoperable, they're not going to be able to tell by looking at it.
Absolutely.
That's an inoperable weapon. I'm not, so that's obviously an issue too, I think. Other comments or questions for Sergeant White? or thoughts, or just thoughts in general about where we go from here?
I mean, obviously, I'm thinking that the assumption behind the gun buyback program is fewer guns out there, less opportunity or less probability of violence with the use of firearms involved. So I was just curious, what's the theory behind what are the firearms that are being brought in? You sort of mentioned it by saying the majority seem to be old hunting rifles that maybe someone inherited or were passed down through the family, but I wondered if you had a feeling of what are these firearms that are being brought in? Are they firearms that someone doesn't know how to use, but they were left by their father or their grandfather, or is it maybe people that somehow have gotten a gun and they shouldn't come into their possession, they shouldn't have it, they know they shouldn't have it, and so they're trying to get rid of it, no questions asked, or
Yeah, I think
what do you
the
think it
individual
is?
situations probably vary pretty vastly, but I think the theory is either way, if these people are looking to get rid of these firearms, they're in places, whether it's their homes or their cars, where they potentially fall in the hands of criminals through burglaries and thefts and things as such. So I guess it limits the opportunity where, thieves and criminals would have the opportunity to take illegal possession of the gun.
I did read one study that said that one of the shifts in, I guess if you call it gun culture or gun sales in this country, is hunting rifles, that the number of people hunting has really plummeted since the 1970s. So that kind of fits with what you said about old hunting rifles that people were trying to get rid of. So anyway, thank you.
Other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I just like I view it as doing the residents a favor, taking something off their hands. Maybe their father used. It's lying around, and I look at it as just that, an opportunity, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think that's a big part of it. I know for myself, I think, and you've said it, Mr. Snipes alluded to it as well, every gun that's turned in is one less gun that you and Lieutenant Ward and the other members of the police department have to worry about. It's one less gun that could get stolen. Somebody breaks into a house, and it's a gun that you've kept because you just didn't know what to do with it, or you just figured out someday I'll get around to doing something with this, and then somebody steals it and it's used. It's one less gun that some little kid's going to pick up because he thinks it's a toy. And there have been a couple tragic incidents just over the past few months of small children, 4, 5, 6 years old, picking up guns and killing family members. I think it was a father, I think it was in San Diego or something, like Phoenix or someplace, just a week or two ago, who was killed. I think his son was 4 years old, picked up a gun and shot him. Didn't know what it was. So any chance of reducing any of that, in my mind, is a good thing. I know there was some concern in discussing this with board members about cost, overall total cost, and I know we had talked about capping the amount of money we spend on this between staffing, obviously with the police personnel who are going to be there, and how much we pay out, generating some kind of a cap that we would not go over. And if we hit that cap, that was it. We just say, we'd stop. I think there's also the opportunity to contact some local businesses just to see if there's interest in sort of sponsoring this, donating money for it. I think I think there were 2 businesses in Ben Salem that had coupons or something like that, or something. The first 100 people or something got something from. I forget what the businesses were now, but I don't know if you remember them or not. But
I don't.
Yeah, so I forget what exactly it was, but it was something they did partner up, which obviously could defray the cost as well.
Mr. Harvey, Ben Salem used a significant amount of the money that they used came from federal drug forfeiture money.
Right.
And as if the board decides to move forward, I believe that our office will work with Lieutenant Ward in seeing if there are any grants available to fund part of this program.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand the buyback, like over in Burlington, was financed all through forfeitures, right? Through the state.
That's where a lot of the money comes from, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of money lying around from drug forfeitures. So the federal government likes to use it for programs like this.
Okay. All right. Yeah, certainly Lieutenant Ward has a pretty fair track record when it comes to grant money. So, obviously we hope he'll be able to get on that a little bit.
I did have one more question.
Sure.
What's your feeling on turning people away that show up because we either kept either they're from New Jersey or Delaware, or let's say Jersey, or we've hit our cap? I mean, is your feeling like, oh, great, now they're riding around with firearms in the car?
My understanding from speaking with the officers that were conducting the Ben Salem program was that because of the fact that they were using federal funding, that they had to go by their guidelines, part of which was that it was completely anonymous, and they were not allowed to turn people away based on residency.
Okay. All right, so something we'll have to take a look at. Okay. Okay, I'm interested to hear some public comment. I'm sure there's some. Sure, Lieutenant Ward.
Ben Salem didn't anticipate, and we should, if we're really going to consider this, was people showing up, jumping the line and purchasing the guns off of the people in line for more money.
That's right.
If there was actually an assault weapon, $150 for an assault weapon is chump change. They'd be willing to pay a lot more. So between the solicitor's office and us, if we could somehow come up with a plan to make sure that doesn't happen on the property. I mean, it's legal to do. Ben Salem didn't think about it beforehand. Nobody thought about it before. And once it happened, there was really not much you could do about it.
Right.
But that's just something that we should think about.
No, it's a good point. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Any other comments or questions? No. Well, here's some public comment. Is there a motion of public comment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ms. Mariani?
We had some over here till almost like midnight. Yeah, probably even later than midnight sometimes.
It is delusional to believe that gun buybacks reduce criminal violence. No such thing as gun violence. It's criminal violence. John Vernick, he's a researcher at Johns Hopkins University. They co-authored 2 studies and concluded that there is no evidence that buybacks reduce criminal violence and that money could be put to better use. Buybacks are expensive. Now, proponents of this program haven't clearly identified the cause of criminal violence. That's what the problem is. The problem that the mayors of Philadelphia and Chicago, those people have, is not that there's too many guns. There's too many criminals. And they're going to have to get that straight. Now, Chicago probably has the most stringent gun laws in the country. They had 36 shootings this weekend. Now, just consider some facts. Our police department is going to have to run every gun they take in through the national database. That's because if any gun were stolen, they're going to have to return it to the owner. If there's any weapon that they identify as an item of evidence, now they got to catalog it, take it. Criminals don't turn guns in. It's as simple as that. Most people who turn guns in wouldn't use them for criminal activity anyway. Most of these people are generally law-abiding and just may not want a firearm around the house. Most of the guns that turn in are not what they call high-risk guns. They tend to be revolvers, old, low caliber, broken, and the difference is high-risk guns tend to be semi-automatic pistols, high caliber, and they're newer. Now, this is one that is very important. Rarely is a suicide committed with the type of weapon turned in. Very rarely is a suicide committed with the type of weapon that people turn in. Most of the firearm used in a suicide generally new and recently purchased. Buybacks are expensive, and why waste tax money for a program that clearly doesn't achieve its objective? Criminals aren't going to turn their guns in. You're not getting guns off the street with a buyback program. What you're doing is getting guns out of a shoebox in the garage or getting an old gun out of an attic somewhere. Now, if someone wants to get rid of a gun, okay, simply let them turn it into the police department. Why do I, as a taxpayer, have to give him money to do that? Well, it's an incentive. You give people incentives to get rid of a refrigerator, a computer, a TV. No. Why would I pay you to go turn in a gun that you don't want? So, you know, Mr. Chairman, you are a firearm owner, as I am, okay? Now, your firearm, obviously, this weekend or tomorrow or the next day, is not going to go out and commit a murder. It's not going to go out and hold anyone up. Certainly, you aren't going to do anything like that. It's clear. It's the criminal, not the firearm. I'm saying what we ought to get our police to do, and they're doing a good job of it. You get rid of criminals. You don't get rid of firearms. And don't waste our tax money on this. It's a foolish notion. It doesn't reduce criminal activity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kinney?
Here you go, Lieutenant. Take me in now. I was just thinking of something. Obama wants to send a lot of guns over to these rebels to defend. Why can't our senators, congressmen and everything talk up, get all our townships, all our cities to buy back these guns, buy them all back. Federal government pays us for what we paid for them and send them over there. Guess what? Keeps everybody in a job, takes care of the rebels. If it don't shoot, that's on them. I mean, I carry a bullet around with me. It's inside me, but I carry it around. And I'm one that, you know, I believe in the Second Amendment. You want guns? That's your. I don't allow them in my house. I got a fist of iron, a fist of steel. You come in my house, you better. The first bullet better do its job, because you ain't getting a second chance.
See you in 30 minutes.
What'd you say?
I'll see you in 30 minutes.
Mr. Dell.
Mr. Mariani summed it up, pretty much everything I felt, but the guns you're going to get back are going to be junk. They're going to be starter pistols, 22s with no hammers on them, no cylinders, and you guys are not going to, it's not going to help anybody. These are not guns of any quality. If they were, they'd be selling them at the gun shop. And the criminals are not going to be getting rid of a $600 or $700 Glock for a free chicken or a $100 coupon at Giant. It's not going to happen. These guns that they have are going to stay in their possession. The guns you're going to get are closet finds, old beat-up guns, rust-covered, shotguns with duct tape on the handle. I mean, you guys are going to be getting the junk that would never show up anyway, and half the people that rob these stores say they have a gun, you never even see it. So you could use a cap gun, a plastic gun, whatever. These guns that are non-functional that we're paying for is a colossal waste of money, and it's a wasted program. And, you know, you guys feel free to go down to Philadelphia or Trenton or Chicago with a $100 bill sticking out of your pocket. Trust me, there's going to be a gun pointed at your forehead. And they've had dozens of these programs. And the problem is, when they show these guns on the news, you always see nice assault rifles laying around and stuff. Those weren't the guns that were brought back. They're photography guns. You're not seeing $2,000 and $3,000 assault rifles getting turned in for $200. These guys know what they have, they know their value, and they're not getting rid of them. You're just basically paying money for trash, and it's just it's not going to make a dent in any crime or any criminal activity. But that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Other comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Christine.
Tom Wilson, resident of Falls Township for 36 years plus. Number one, the gentleman that mentioned the criminal aspect. I'm worried. Number one, I'm a fire police officer with a local fire department. I work with the Falls Township Police. If your job was to be out every day, it gets your attention as far as weapons. And it's getting worse, month by month. It's a big problem. I'm worried about firearms that are workable, a criminal breaking into a house, taking that weapon and using it. I'm worried about a child picking up that weapon, curious, using it. I think it's a worthwhile effort, having a buyback program. It's a good start, number one. And as time goes along, hopefully we can improve on that. But believe me, if you're out there every day seeing what's going on, you have to do something. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Couple issues just to talk about. I mean, a couple of the speakers mentioned buying weapons off of criminals. I don't think we actually ever mentioned that. I don't think we're foolish enough to think that someone, who's just robbed a bank, with an expensive automatic weapon is going to sort of walk up and just hand it to us in exchange for a $100 bill. But, as I said, and Mr. Wilson just said as well, my concern is about the people that have these in their attics, have them in their closets, in a shoebox, in the garage, somewhere that they keep forgetting. They don't know what to do with it. They don't, forget they have it. They keep thinking they're going to use it at some point, and I'll get around to use it, and they never do. In the meantime, somebody breaks into their house and they take it. And now where is it? We don't know. That's a serious concern I have. The study, and I was talking with a coworker today about this, and the study that was mentioned about buybacks not decreasing crime. To me, it's a ridiculous study. How can you possibly measure crimes that would have been committed had you not taken an action? It's impossible to measure. It's sort of like, in many ways, the DARE program. What we do is educate kids about making good choices, staying away from drugs, staying away from alcohol, bad decisions. It's impossible to measure how many kids don't, take drugs, don't start drinking when they're in 7th grade, don't make a bad choice. In order to really measure it, we'd have to go back in time, not do the program, and then see which kids made different choices. Obviously, none of that's possible. Same thing with guns. How do we know that a gun that's turned in wouldn't have been stolen in a week or 2 weeks, or wouldn't have been picked up by a child, or wouldn't have been used in a fit of rage? Somebody gets mad and there's some kind of problem and they reach for a gun because they know it's there. Statistics show, I believe, that people are more likely to be killed by a gun that's in their house than by someone strange in Philadelphia who puts a gun in their face. It's odd. That's the odd sense. That's the odd part of crime. But I appreciate the comments. I kind of expected. Obviously, nothing sort of varied. The comments I heard didn't really change, weren't really different from what I expected to hear tonight. It is something we've discussed for a couple months now on this board as to what we want to do and how we want to move forward. And I appreciate the work of the police department being here this evening and putting together a plan. I'll open up just for other board members' comments or questions or thoughts at this point.
Well, just said, Mr. Chairman, we have, we don't all have the same philosophy straight down the line on this. And I read the same Johns Hopkins studies, but I'd just like to reiterate what I said earlier. If you're doing someone a favor, maybe where you're going to get to use some seizure money to do this as well. And it might be that rifle in the attic that the grandchild might find one day. And we're prompting these people. We're giving them a moment to think about it and say, oh, yeah, you know what, this is a good opportunity. Go up and get Grandpop's handgun from World War II or something and bring it down there. And I think it's a worthwhile effort. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, so a good discussion. The things the board has to decide between now and any future meeting when we take some action on this, if we take action on this, is obviously a date and time if we want to do this. Costs, categories of weapons that we want to create and how much we're going to be offering, for whatever type of weapon, revolvers versus semi-automatic handguns versus et cetera, et cetera. So those are the decisions we'll have to make. We'll make those in conjunction with our police department. And in a future meeting, we'll obviously take a vote on this to move forward, amount to spend, and everything else. So there'll be another chance for people to comment and another chance for people to have some input on this. But I appreciate all the comments and board members as well as public. And again, thank you to Sergeant White and Lieutenant Ward for being here. So,
Mr. Chairman, I did want to say that the operations plan that was put together by the police department I thought was really clear and really helpful in thinking about it. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. All right, item 7 on our agenda is to consider adopting a Falls Township employee handbook. Mr. Gray has been working quite a long time on this with our labor attorney. Mr. Gray?
Yes, Falls Township has prepared a revised employee handbook. The last handbook was prepared over 10 years ago. This revised copy has been in the works for some time. This updated comprehensive handbook was forwarded also to the unions for review. The copy includes updates, including but not limited to employee benefits, computer usage, including social media, internet, email, leave of absences, including FMLA issues, and military leave. The board is asked to consider adopting this updated employee handbook.
Okay. And this is a handbook that's available, you know, someone's hired at the township, a new hire, or actually anybody who works in the township would get this handbook.
Yes, these will be distributed to the staff and new
so
hires.
they know the rules of the township. We've had issues in the past. You know, we've kind of made little, you know, things here and there. If something comes up, as an issue comes up with an employee that we didn't necessarily have addressed in a handbook, you know, it gets addressed. And as one of the examples Mr. Gray mentioned was the social media, which of course, I don't know when the last handbook was passed. It was certainly
2001.
2001, yeah, certainly.
Social media.
There was no such thing as social media. The telephone was social media, and it had a cord on it, you know. And so obviously here in the township, obviously, you know, we have connection to the internet. It was, you know, we have to do business, and how are people using that? Are they using it appropriately, et cetera? So that's just one of the ideas of things to update. Comments or questions from board members regarding the employee handbook? Let's go the other direction here. Mr. Rocco?
It seems pretty straightforward. Is there any highlights? I mean, Mr. Harvey mentioned social media, but anything else that significantly changed?
Yeah, the social media, internet, and email are the big items. A lot of employees have this more readily available than they did 10 years ago. We incorporated that. There have been some other minor additions along the way to spell things out that are more clear for employees, what they're expected to do on the job and what's available to them, those type of items.
Is every employee required to sign?
Yes, on the last page, there's a notice saying an acknowledgement stating that they received it.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, Mr. Snipes?
No.
Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Okay. One question I had just looking here, one of the, page 8, Mr. Gray. I thought there had been sort of an addition in here in the first paragraph regarding discrimination, race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability. I thought we had added sexual orientation in there.
Yes, that was also in there. This particular copy does not have it. I'll make sure it's included as well.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, and as Mr. Gray said, all the employee unions representing our different employees have taken a look at this. They've had a chance to review it and have comments and questions, and board members have had a chance to review it, comments and questions. So, any public comment? See no hands. Okay, is there a motion then to adopt the Falls Township Employee Handbook as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item number 8 is consider awarding township insurance policy for the period of June 18th, 2013 to June 18th, 2014. This is for property, general liability, and public liability. Mr. Gray.
The township received quotes for insurance from Jerry Vaughn regarding the upcoming insurance proposal for the period June 18, 2013 and ending June 18, 2014. Vaughn Insurance solicited quotes from 6 separate insurance groups. 4 insurance groups provided quotes. They include National Casualty, $397,000, Travelers, $308,000, Trident/MRM, $365,000, Brit/Companion, $344,000, and Penn Prime and Glatfelder did not provide quotes. Travelers insured the township for 7 of the last 11 years. Last year, the township paid to Travelers for the 2012-2013 insurance policy $296,016. If the township were to choose the Travelers group, this would result in an increase of 4.2% over the prior year. Some of the highlights of the Travelers package include $500 deductible on most cars, $1,000 on trucks and fire vehicles, $10,000 deductible on public officials liability, police liability, and employment practices, and an average cost for vehicle insurance on all the vehicles, including fire and police, $593. It is requested the board consider Travelers for the general insurance package for the period June 18, 2013 through June 18, 2014.
Okay, comments or questions from board members? Mr. Rocco?
Yes, today's June 18th.
Yes, it starts today.
And what happens if we didn't pass it?
We'd be in trouble.
We'd be in trouble, okay.
What we've done in past years, if it's a day or two afterwards, we would get a rider for those additional 2 days, so we would be covered.
Do you know what we paid 2011 to 2012 increase? I think it was higher, wasn't it?
The prior year?
Remember?
Yeah, it was
last year, over this
Yeah,
year.
but on the past year on the table, wouldn't it?
I was just
Yeah,
curious.
264. Yeah, it was 264 the prior.
2011.
Say it again?
It's 264.
Oh, yeah, I guess percentage-wise, is it higher than 4%?
No, it's they're going back year by year. So this was the current year.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if it
Year
went up
before
more
and the year
this year than it did the prior year. That's all.
In terms of
in terms of overall.
Yeah, well, no, you're right. In terms of from 11-12 to 12-13, it was a larger percentage increase.
Yeah, I thought I remembered having that conversation.
Right, sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yeah.
I probably didn't explain it well. That's all I had.
Okay. Mr. Snipes?
Mr. Gray, you felt happy with Travelers?
Absolutely. Whenever we have questions, they're prompt. They give us a detailed response. They do a good job.
And most of these quotes, I mean, are pretty, the highest quote is 397, the lowest is 308, that's Travelers, so it's almost, it's in the $90,000 difference, so that's substantial. The others are pretty close.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Galway?
No questions.
In terms of explaining, I guess, this jump, this is it's a jump. It's not as big as the year before. So for $12,000 more, what would explain that? Some of the things that might cause that to go up? Some of the reasons for the increase include the senior center, the addition. That's going to be put on the insurance policy. We did an audit of all our assets here in the township, in the police, park and rec, public works. There were some additional assets that we put on the insurance rolls. Some of the claims that were submitted to insurance carrier last year, Travelers, also contributed to the increase. And finally, the market condition as well. So there's a couple factors. Okay. All right, thank you. Any public comment? See no hands. All right, is there a motion then to award the township insurance policy for the period of June 18th, 2013 to June 18th, 2014, property, general liability, public liability, to Travelers in the amount of $308,576?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, item number 9, consider adopting ordinance amendment to Township Code for Ordinances, Chapter 203, for no parking signs on Philadelphia Avenue. Board members had a discussion with property owner who would be affected by this, and I think what we're going to be doing is we want to have a conversation with that property owner. So we're going to table this item tonight. We'll come back to it in a month. July 16th, I believe, is our second, or would be our meeting. And so in the meantime, we'll have a meeting with that property owner and see if we can work out some details regarding this. Is that pleasure of the board?
Yes.
To
Yes.
table, is there a motion to table to July 13th, excuse me, July 16th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Sorry you had to wait the whole meeting to hear that.
Okay. All right, item number 10. Sorry. Consider adopting ordinance for vacation of a portion of Old Oxford Valley Road. I know Ms. Gallagher has been working very, very long on this. Too long, probably, for such a small piece of land.
Yes, has been a long time. This is in connection with a litigation matter with the Flynn Company. And we approved this for advertising a couple of months ago. Essentially what's happening here is there is a roughly 12,000 square foot piece of Old Oxford Valley Road that dead ends into properties that the surrounding properties are all owned by the Flynn Company. Mr. Flynn would like to request that the township vacate that portion of Old Oxford Valley Road, and eventually he will be submitting land development applications to consolidate those parcels and develop over this portion of Old Oxford Valley Road. It's not used by the township or any residents. There's no pass-through there. Like I said, it dead ends in the property. A petition was filed with the Court of Common Pleas in Bucks County to permit the vacation of the road as we're doing it this way, and that petition was granted back in May, so we have a court order allowing us to do this. So what we advertised for tonight was the consideration of the ordinance and also a public hearing to consider the request to vacate that portion of Old Oxford Valley Road.
Right, apologies. All right, so we have to have a motion then to open the public hearing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, this is a matter that is connected with litigation docketed at Civil Action Number Bucks County 2010-13053. And the legal description of the property is contained in the court order that was signed by Judge Devlin Scott on May 1st, 2013. The tax map parcels that surround the portion of Old Oxford Valley Road are 13391, 13333, and 2257-812. There's also a small portion of this road that is contained in Middletown Township, who is separately considering the portion to vacate, the petition to vacate that portion of the road. And if the board does approve the petition and pass the ordinance, Mr. Flynn will be paying roughly $38,000 in consideration of the vacation of the road to the township.
Okay. All right. So we're opening up for any public comments or questions. See one hand, Mr. Kinney.
Is this Ox Valley Road down where McDonald's is?
Now, this is section over behind sort of where like Red Roof Inn. It's over. That's still Oxford Valley Road way up there. It's old Oxford Valley Road.
No, I was just
going
to mention down there because my daughter got a $300 ticket because she didn't realize she was in the middle lane. And she was supposed to turn because it's on the ground. She went straight, and naturally one of my Falls Township cops had to get her. And then then she has her 4-year-old son and 7-year-old grandson in the car with her. And my daughter always tells, no matter what, when you're in trouble, go to an officer. But she happened to be over Coles.
Okay.
And the kid got lost. They were just about to send out the Amber Alert, and Falls Township officer found them. She come back, she said, I said, hey, I tell you, once you got your license, you get a ticket. If you're guilty, pay it and forget about it. And she was guilty.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Dell?
Who came up with the $38,000 value for that road?
It was an appraisal, correct?
That's correct. It was appraisal completed by Benchmark Appraisal Group.
Okay. How many square feet are we talking about? Or how big is this road?
It's not much.
12,917 square feet
Okay.
total.
12,000 square feet.
Not very big.
No.
Okay.
No.
Almost a little bit bigger, quarter of an acre, so. So I guess that'd be about a fair price for that anyway. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, any board comment or question?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. Do we close the public comment or portion, or are you going to have to wrap up, I guess, maybe? Then we close the public hearing?
You can close the public hearing. with
Okay.
that.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Guess we don't do a lot of public hearings. It's a little different for us in terms of process, but okay. All right. So we've had the public hearing. We've heard some board public comment, board comments. A relatively simple thing here. This would be ordinance 2013-3. Okay. All right. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2013-3?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Item number 11 is the much talked about, infamous, famous something, Falls-Tullytown border war. Not quite as bad as the 38th parallel, but a few years ago, an issue was raised about the border between Falls and Tullytown as it applied to one of the landfills that we share. Unfortunately, the property line, the geographic feature that marked that property line, was buried under several thousand tons of trash, and so it was impossible to see exactly where it was. Tullytown engineers did not necessarily agree with what Falls Township engineers thought was accurate, and vice versa. And so we agreed together, the two communities, to hire a company that did orthorectification. Is that correct?
It is correct.
That's correct. All right. Which basically means they fly over in a plane, they take a picture, they compare it to an old picture, and then they match up any features that are existing. That was done. I think October, was the report, something around there. Was that correct, Mr. Sullivan?
That's correct. Our portion of the report was done in October of last year.
Okay. For the past several months, there has been a lot of disagreement over which report we were looking at. The solicitor in Tullytown kept referencing a report but never showed us what it was. When there was some reference to a report, and they finally did sort of give us one, it was not one that we had agreed to. And despite numerous attempts to get that solicitor to sort of meet in person with our solicitors so that we could actually just look at the plans and figure out what the problem was, he resisted that and instead, I think, talked about suing us. Lo and behold, when they finally did actually get together and look at the plans, it took a matter of probably a few minutes to realize that what we agreed on and everything is now solved. So, should have been done a long time ago. We certainly made our best efforts to attempt it. I'd like to thank the mayor of Tullytown, Dave Kuchenil, who I got on the phone with last week, and through a series of telephone calls, we're able to manage to sort of get everything straightened away. We're here this evening, and we are looking at a resolution. We have maps in front of us, which Mr. Sullivan agrees with. These are the same maps that Tullytown will be considering. I guess it's next week. They'll be looking at this. And essentially, where does this take us? Where do we go from here? Mr. Clark or Ms. Gallagher, or what happens now after we agree to this?
Once the line is established, and then the amount of trash that is dumped in and the amount of tipping fees that are paid will be adjusted by waste management to correspond with the percentages on the landfill. It will also apply to an area known as valley fill, which Waste Management is currently, I believe they're in the process of permitting, which will be another landfill that they will use in the interim as they're waiting for what we commonly refer to as the Coke Works landfill to come online in the next 4 or 5 years. But this will just be an adjustment. Once the line is established, it may also be established that one of the municipalities has been overpaid or underpaid. We've had several discussions with Waste Management where if there is an overpayment to one municipality, the trash that's dumped in there from this day forward will just be, the payments will just be adjusted accordingly.
Okay. All right, so
I should also indicate that once this dispute first came to the attention of Waste Management, it's our understanding that Waste has just been paying the fees at 50% to each municipality, figuring it'll be much easier to rectify at some later date.
Yeah, I think previously, before this dispute, the landfill was thought to be 51% in Falls, 49% in Tullytown, and the waste that was the fees that were generated by the waste was distributed that way.
Correct.
And as you just said, once the claim was made that the line was incorrect, Waste Management began dumping everything 50-50. You know, so, and I did that with our knowledge. We were okay with that. That was fine. Comments or questions from board members for either Mr. Sullivan or Mr. Clark? Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
So you're saying going forward, if it's when it's been determined whether someone's been overpaid or underpaid, going forward, those, say, an overpayment will be backed out of what payments would have come to the party who was overpaid?
Correct.
Okay. And do we have a feeling at this point, with the new indication of the line, how falls in this?
The only indication that we've had is a meeting that we had with Waste Management where they estimated the amount of overpayment to Falls may be approximately $5,700.
Okay, well, I guess we're not going to worry too much about that.
We have not been. But again, understanding that part of this was establishing for Valley Fill, which will be the last landfill in Tullytown. So it may be that they were more concerned about establishing the boundary line for Valley Fill, the future one, than they are for the existing landfill. But our understanding from Waste is that it is not a significant amount of money.
Okay, thank you. I was looking at the map we were given. It shows the historic roads from 1937 going through what's buried under the landfill. It mentions pivot point, and I don't know what the pivot point, just out of curiosity, Mr. Sullivan, what is the pivot point on here?
That's where the change in direction of the boundary is.
Change in direction of the
Yes.
boundary?
Yeah.
Because it looks like a straight line that runs through there.
Well, if I know what you're talking about, which I may not.
Maybe it's
just a slight
maybe it's a slight
degree
slight
or two change. Is any kind of, doesn't have to be a 90-degree change,
Right.
correct? Could be an 8.
Correct.
So there's a very slight change there somewhere under the
But,
landfill.
I mean, what was going on was there were two lines. One was shown on one plan, another line was shown on another plan.
Right.
So we did this historic aerial review process, and turned out the actual line is kind of in between both.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Pivot point, I think, on this plan is where the actual line that we're establishing crosses over one of the lines.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Rocco?
Just one. So I think it was reported, was it last week by the Courier
It was a
Times?
story last week, yeah.
Yeah, and it was 6 figures, not 4.
All the information we have and all the discussions that we've had with Waste Management, and there have been numerous meetings and discussions with Waste Management, that the amount that we're talking about solely right now that there's an overpayment is in that $5,700 range, especially in light of the fact, as we said, that Waste, when this problem began 3 years ago, immediately began to adjust the payments, so it was no longer 5149, it was 50/50, thus further reducing the amount of any potential overpayment. If someone in Tullytown is saying six figures, they may be referring to
Future.
Valley Fill, but that's not an overpayment, that's just the establishment of a line, so. But I'm not sure where that number comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, comments or questions from the public? See no hands. Okay, all right then, so we'd be adopting this resolution. It's also important, I know Mr. Clark hasn't necessarily said this outright, but, you know, sort of alluded to it. This does not require either municipality to sort of pay back anything to the other one from anything in the past. You know, it's essentially, you know, anything in any kind of overpayment or underpayment in the past is forgiven. You know, we're not going to be writing a check to Tullytown. They're not going to be writing a check to us to make up for anything. So there really isn't any kind of cost here to this in terms of having to make up for anything. This is Resolution 1314?
14.
All right. Okay, which would be a joint resolution of the Board of Supervisors and Tullytown Borough to fix the municipal boundary line. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, next is consider renewal of the police chief's employment contract. Mr. Clark, I just want to explain how this, you know, the contract was worded in a certain way, and you know, we're taking a look at it now. It doesn't necessarily change anything, just sort of an update.
No, the original agreement with Chief Wilcox became effective on October 17th, 2007. The original agreement was a 5-year contract, and then when it expired on October 16th, 2012, there were 5 consecutive 1-year renewals. Although the contract calls for an automatic renewal unless terminated by the board took the action of voting to renew the contract last July 17th. Since our July meeting is within the 90-day requirement of the contract's expiration date on October 16th of 2013, we have listed it for approval this evening. All of the terms of the agreement that was negotiated with Chief Wilcox back in 2007 remain the exact same. Chief Wilcox's raise is dictated by the raise that is received by his lieutenants. That contract with the lieutenants is currently being negotiated now. So if it's taken care of by October 16th, then Chief Wilcox will get a raise beginning on October 16th. If the lieutenant's contract isn't completed by October 16th, then whenever it is, Chief Wilcox will get a raise retroactive to October 16th of 2013.
Okay. All right, comments or questions regarding the renewal of Chief Wilcox's contract? Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Snipes?
No.
Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, I just have one. In '07, the salary was 101. I guess this is for you, Pete. What is today's salary? 5.5 years later.
2012 salary that he's working off right now is 118,000 plus change.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right, comments or questions from the public? Is it something you can just say from there, Mr. Kinney, or is it just pass it? Yes.
I have no problems if you vote on it, renewing it, because as I said many years ago, I'll put him up against any chief in the country.
Sure.
And the last thing I said was he's still good looking.
I'm sure he'll be.
Make sure you do it.
Sure, he'll be happy to hear that. Lieutenant Ward can text him that now. I guess keep him up to date. All right, is there a motion then to extend the employment agreement for Chief Wilcox for another year?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Okay. Well, I wasn't really going to do it until you said something, Mr. Kinney. Just, you pushed me over the edge here. All right, next item on agenda 13, consider change order for the Falls Township Senior Center. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your consideration this evening is change order number 2 for the Senior Center project. There are 7 items in this change order that Craft Source has been authorized to complete as soon as you vote in the affirmative, that is. They are replace 2 windows in existing offices with fire-rated units. The Senior Center staff wants to be able to look into the new hallway, and to do that, the windows have to be fire-rated. The existing windows are not.
Bless you.
There will be 2 new light standards in the parking lot, and then they will retrofit 7, therefore then retrofit 7 light standards with LED lights instead of the usual either high-pressure sodium or metal halides. There's an upgrade to the existing Pico connection box, which was found to be potentially unsafe for use in the new addition. That was something that occurred during the process of the work. We opened the electrical box and found out that it needed upgrading. Senior Center staff asked to keep the vestibule door that they had in place after it had been removed. This will create basically an airspace between the new door and the old vestibule door, so that's been salvaged and reinstalled. The other 2 items deal with the detention basin. There's a wetland area just below where the detention basin drains in between the golf course and the Senior Center. Doesn't drain at all. It's kind of silted in over the years, so we decided to change it from a detention basin that would have an actual discharge to basically a constructed wetlands to kind of be in concert with the existing wetland area. And also then, since it's very close to the parking lot, we thought it was prudent to put in a guide rail, and we went with the timber guide rail so that people exiting or entering the parking area would be discouraged from running into the basin.
Driving into the basin.
Yeah. Running, driving, whatever. Those are the items of the change order. And the total cost of this change order would be an increase of $65,215.00.
Okay. All right, so some of these obviously are issues that as we go along and building it, little things you don't necessarily think about until you actually start doing it. And the people that work in that building and use that building obviously know more about it than we do. In terms of the lighting, really, I think it's safe to say the lighting in the parking lot previously really didn't even meet our standards or code.
It did not.
At all. So obviously, for safety reasons and just to meet our own codes, I mean, it's tough for us to tell people to meet codes if we're not meeting our own codes. The lights have to be upgraded. So comments or questions from board members regarding the change order? Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Mr. Rocco?
I have none.
Okay. Any public comment? See one hand. Open motion. Motion to open public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Kinney?
All these add-ons that you said is doing a fantastic job over there. Them lights are fantastic. That parking light lights up at night now.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he says that he's doing is good for the seniors. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. Is there a motion then to approve the change order number 2 for the Falls Township Senior Center in the amount of $65,215?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes? Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda, the minutes from May 7th and May 22nd. Comments or questions, we'll approve these together, but comments, questions or reviews for the May 7th meeting? Corrections of any kind? No?
I have none.
Okay. How about for May 22nd?
None?
Nope.
No? Okay. All right, I guess I'll have to say this since Mr. Snipe stepped out a little bit. Excellent minutes as always, Mrs. Pullen. Is there a motion to accept the minutes from May 7th and May 22nd as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Engineers report, which is for May of 2013. Mr. Sullivan, back to you. Give us some highlights here.
Got a few highlights this evening. As we mentioned, the senior center is the addition is actually near completion. Most of the interior work is done or will be done very soon. And at that point, the contractor then will move back outside to finish all the site work. We're still looking at basically on August 1st, 2013 completion. The one item that remains unresolved at this point is the location of the transformer, but that is something that's ongoing. Will not stop the project from being complete. It's possible that work will be done after we've actually finished the addition, but that won't be a problem. I mentioned last month, I'll mention again, the tennis courts, Penn's Grant, that project is complete and the courts are ready for use. 2012 road program, the storm sewer on Winding Way West and Midway Drive is nearing completion and should be done within the next couple of weeks. At that point, all roads will be under some type of reconstruction. Some of the roads have been completed under binder course. Paul Drive and Mark Drive are done. Hedgerow Drive is in the process of being constructed. Louise Drive has sidewalks and aprons being done at this time. And also over in Falsington, LaCrosse Street and Headley Place will be paved in the near future. Main Street still requires a bit of stormwater work to be completed before that will be milled and paved. At this point, we believe that the 2012 road program will be complete at the latest in mid-August. And at this time, 2013 road program is out for bid, and we assume that that was started, or plan to have that start just about the time we finish 2012. So toward the end of August. That's all I have.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions for Mr. Sullivan regarding his report? Mr. Rocco?
Just one on the Yatsko Field parking lot lighting.
Yes.
It says you're anticipating it to be done, is it done in July?
It's possible to be done in July. We don't anticipate going out for public bid on that because we think it'll be less than the threshold for public bid, less than $18,000. So we'll be soliciting directly to contractors. So we do that between now and the middle of July, and we could probably get the work done by the end of July.
Okay, yeah, because I know they have a fall ball program, and it gets dark, and
yeah,
they're probably racing off the fields there, so. Thank you, that's all I had.
Okay, Mr. Snipes?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Galloway?
No questions.
Okay. No, I've talked to Mr. Sullivan a couple times regarding Main Street in Falsington. There are some drains. There's still some open drains, stormwater drains, in front of some of the properties, probably for the past 100 years or so, or if not more. But certainly you have some people just almost, there's no piping. It's just everything's right. You have the front yard, and then you have an open drain, and then you have a little concrete walkway to get to the actual road. And so we're looking at ways to sort of close that in. A little bit safer, obviously, and gives people a little bit more of a, some people have asked about if we could address that. Some of the residents there asked if we could address those situations. So there are a few houses that have that, and that's obviously causing a little bit of a delay. Yardley Avenue was paved not too long before, or right around Election Day in May. And so obviously it's been about a month, and I'm sure the people over there are getting a little anxious to wonder when the rest of the projects can be done, but that's kind of the holdup at this point. So appreciate everybody's patience, and we are looking at it and trying to get it done as soon as we can. So is there a motion to approve the May 2013 engineering report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, bill list, which is dated June 18th, 2013, is in the amount of $2,185,647.71. Of that, $2.1 million, $768,000 is payroll, $234,000 is health insurance. So we're looking at almost, close to $1 million just with those two items. And obviously, the senior center is involved in this, as well as workers' compensation insurance is $100,000. The road program is about $380,000. Tennis courts about $50,000. There are definitely, a lot of small items on here, $22 here, $69 there. But certainly we're looking at the lion's share come with some of the big ticket items. About $17,000 just in fuel for township vehicles, for this month. $26,000 for street lights. And so that's the monthly bills that we have. Comments or questions regarding the bill list? From anybody?
No.
No? Okay. All right, then, is there a motion to pay the bills? $2,185,647.71.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay, we do not have a need for an executive session. Manager comment, Mr. Gray?
Yes, just one item tonight, Mr. Chairman. The township received a request for a release of a cash escrow in the amount of $1,571 for 210 Durham Court, Fairless Hills, PA. This escrow has been reviewed by the engineer's office. All final inspections have been completed and is ready for release. The board is asked to consider this escrow release.
Okay, comments or questions? No? All right, is there a motion then to approve the escrow release, $1,571 for Mr. and Mrs. Serenelli, 210 Durham Court, Fairless Hills?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right, up to board comment. I'm sure if Mr. Dents were here, again, he's at work, trapped at work, I'm sure he would give out thanks for everybody who did something to make Q for the Troops a big success. Mr. Rocco and Mr. Galloway were also there for that, taking part in the competition. Let's see, in terms of other board comment, Mr. Rocco, anything for you?
I have nothing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Galloway?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you for an excellent meeting.
Okay, thank you. Just the one item I have, the township received an application for purchase of a liquor license from the Fairless Hills Fire Company for their bank facility at Westby Hall. In the letter, which we'll be most likely looking at in July, we have to look at that application in a very formal manner. They did ask for us to waive the application fee, which I believe is $1,000 for that. And I think we've done that before with different things regarding nonprofits, churches, and fire companies. Is there a motion to waive the application fee for Fairless Hills Fire Company for the purchase of a liquor license?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I just want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. Vacation starting, school's letting out. Obviously, drive safe. Kids are going to be out a whole lot more than they have been before. So keep an eye out for kids on the road, big ones and little ones. We've been very lucky in this community. We haven't had any kind of tragedies like that, and we would like to keep it that way. And thank everybody for a good meeting. It was a long one, very productive, I think, though. And we'll see everybody in about a month or so. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.